Hogwarts. Who hasn't collected a Horcrux? Chapter 1. July 24, 1991. Sotheby's, London. £1.5 million. William Cavendish, who was just 11 years old, calmly raised his sign. 1.5 million. 1.5 million. Guest number 5 bids £1.5 million. The auctioneer on the stage shouted passionately, without any hesitation because of his age. After all, for the 13th Duke of Devonshire, billionaire William Cavendish, a mere £1.5 million is not worth mentioning at all. 1.5 million. 1.5 million. Are there any customers who want to bid higher? The auctioneer was still very excited, but the customers below did not raise their placards again. Seeing this, the auctioneer regretted not being able to bid a higher price, but he continued to follow the process. Okay. Then 1.5 million once. 1.5 million twice. 1.5 million 3 times. Deal. With the hammer in the auctioneer's hand falling heavily, the jadeite tripod with antique Kuilong pattern from the Qianlong period of the Qing dynasty on the stage was almost William's. For this result, William Cavendish in the audience just raised his eyebrows slightly, looking very calm. But unlike the calmness on the surface, William Cavendish was very active at this time. System, what reward can I get if I collect the things I just photographed? Ding. The collection is a jadeite tripod with antique Kuilong pattern from the Qianlong period of the Qing dynasty. The system's collection rating is 3 stars. The rewards are host's physique plus 3, money plus £4 million. That's right, William Cavendish has a system, the collector's system. Obviously, he is a time traveler. He has been a time traveler since his mother's womb, and he is also bound to this collector's system. However, the system was only turned on his 6th birthday. In the following time, William Cavendish spent more than £7 million to bid for 2 pieces of jade. It was already evening when the auction ended, and William went straight home. As for the things he bid, the butler would naturally be responsible for the follow-up issues. When William finished his dinner and was elegantly sipping tea in the living room, the butler Lawrence finally came back with 3 auction items. Master, I have taken care of everything at the auction house. Do you want to put the items directly in your collection room? Butler Lawrence asked skillfully as soon as he opened his mouth. William shook his head and said, No, we will set off to return to the manor tomorrow. Grandma has urged us several times. If we don't go back, she will be angry. You should arrange the itinerary and take these 3 artworks back to the manor. Butler Lawrence was stunned, and then replied in a brisk tone. Okay, young master, I'll arrange it right away. You can go to bed early. After saying that, Lawrence didn't even bother to eat, and turned around to arrange tomorrow's affairs, while William got up and went upstairs to his bedroom. As soon as he closed the bedroom door, William immediately said to the system in his mind. System, collect the 3 items auctioned today. Ding. Collect the 3-star Mortal Collection, Qing Dynasty Qianlong Jade Carved Antique Kuilong Pattern Ding, and reward the host with plus 3 physical fitness and plus £3 million. Ding. Collect the 3-star Qing Dynasty Qianlong Jade Dragon Carved Lion Button Furnace, which rewards the host with strength plus 3 and money plus £4 million. Ding. Collect the 4-star Ordinary Collection, the White Jade Round Seal with a poem inscribed by Emperor Qianlong of the Qing Dynasty, and reward the host with Spirit plus 4, money plus £8 million. As the mechanical sound of the system sounded, William felt a coolness in his head, and a heat in his body. After a while, when the strange feeling in his body and brain disappeared, William clearly felt that he had become a little stronger. Cool. The system opens my personal panel. Host. William Cavendish. Physical fitness, 60. Strength, 72. Agility, 61. Spirit, 85. Note. The average index of an average adult is 10. Skills. Art appreciation, advanced, horsemanship, advanced, fighting, master, shooting, advanced. Note. Skill levels are divided into primary, intermediate, advanced, master, grandmaster, and legendary. Items. None. The system has been open for 5 years. William has collected hundreds of antiques and artworks, and only then has this superhuman physical fitness. With my current physical condition, any soldier king, special agent, etc., I guess they are all vulnerable. I am really lonely like snow. When he thought that he would become stronger and stronger in the future, William couldn't help singing. How lonely it is to be invincible. How empty it is to be invincible. Alone on the top, the cold wind keeps blowing. My loneliness, who can understand me? After singing a song, William fell asleep leisurely with a good mood. The next day, William was awakened by a clanging sound. The sound came from the window. When William looked over, he found an owl standing outside the window. Not only that, the owl also had a letter in its claws. Owl. William was a little surprised. The owl also noticed William's gaze and pecked the window glass with its beak again. Although this was strange, William thought he was very capable and was not afraid of anything. He got out of bed and opened the window. As soon as the window was opened, the owl threw the letter under its claws to William, and then stood in front of the window and began to comb its feathers. I have only heard of pigeons delivering letters, but I never thought there would be owls delivering letters. The world is so big that nothing is impossible. William sighed, and then picked up the envelope on the ground. There was a wax seal on it, a shield pattern, and a capital letter H in the center of the shield, surrounded by lions, eagles, badgers and snakes. William looked at this strange yet familiar pattern, combined with the fact that owls delivered letters, and the long-lost memories of the previous life that were almost forgotten began to revive. Could this be the admission letter from Hogwarts? You are going to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Deborah frowned at William, but she did not show any surprise or confusion. Deborah's expression made William a little confused. After all, if an ordinary person heard about a magic school, they would be surprised or unbelieving, but Deborah did not. So William asked, "Grandma, have you heard of Hogwarts?" Deborah nodded. "Well, although I don't know much, I have heard of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." William was even more curious when he heard that his grandmother Deborah really knew about Hogwarts. As far as he knew, if ordinary people knew the existence of magic, they would be cast into a forgetfulness spell. He was very curious about how his grandmother knew about Hogwarts. So, William asked again, "Where did you hear it from?" Deborah patted William's palm and explained with a smile. "William, although our family is not active in politics now, the first Duke was the leader of the parliamentary movement, and the fourth Duke was the Prime Minister, although only for a short year. The 8th and 9th Dukes were also high-ranking government officials. Although the magic world is hidden in the dark, they still have connections with high-level government officials to prevent the magic world from being exposed to ordinary people. The secrets passed down in our family record these events." "I see." After listening to Deborah's explanation, William nodded in understanding. Seeing William's interest in the magic world, Deborah sighed imperceptibly. This wise old man already understood his grandson's thoughts. "William, are you going to Hogwarts?" Although she was asking William, Deborah's tone was very affirmative. William didn't pay attention to these small details. After hearing Deborah's question, he nodded excitedly. "Well, Grandma, I want to learn magic." "Well, then you can write back to Hogwarts. I think they should send someone to guide you into the magical world." After hearing what Deborah said, William couldn't wait to get up and run to the study. "Grandma, I'll go write a letter now and come back to chat with you later." Deborah looked at William's receding figure, lost in thought. She was not as relaxed as she appeared to be about her grandson entering a strange magical world. Soon, William finished writing the letter and came out. The owl who delivered the letter was the same one as before. "Has the letter been sent out?" At this time, Deborah had calmed down and looked at William with a loving face. William smiled and nodded. "It has been sent out." Then there were some conversations between the grandparents and grandchildren, and the atmosphere was very warm. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, it was 3 days later. During these 3 days, William was looking forward to the arrival of the Hogwarts professor every day, and he even guessed whether it was Professor McGonagall, Professor Flitwick or other professors. But 3 days passed, and the professors of Hogwarts still did not come, and William's original excitement slowly calmed down. As a result, this morning, William and his grandmother Deborah were having breakfast, and the butler Lawrence came in to report that a professor from Hogwarts came to visit. Hearing this news, William's calm mood instantly became excited when he heard the noise. He dropped the knife and fork in his hand and ran to the door. At this time, a woman in her 50s or 60s stood at the door of the castle. She had a serious expression, wore square glasses, a green cloak, and a tall wizard hat on her head. William saw her as soon as he went out, and a name instantly popped up in his mind, Minerva McGonagall. This image is exactly the same as described in the book, and the appearance is similar to that in the movie. It feels magical. However, William quickly calmed down and returned to his usual elegant and calm appearance. "Hello, ma'am. Are you the professor at Hogwarts?" William asked Professor McGonagall politely. Although he had roughly determined the identity of the person in front of him, he could not explain why he knew McGonagall's identity. Professor McGonagall nodded slightly. "Mr. Cavendish, I am the Vice Headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Minerva McGonagall. You can call me Professor McGonagall." "Okay, Professor McGonagall, please come in." William warmly invited Professor McGonagall into the castle. "Grandma, this is Professor McGonagall, the Deputy Headmaster of Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall, this is my grandmother." William smiled and introduced the two to each other. "Professor McGonagall, welcome. Please take a seat," Deborah said politely. "Thank you, ma'am." McGonagall thanked them and sat down gracefully. After the butler Lawrence poured tea for William and the other two, he was very perceptive and left the living room with the servants. He was indeed a professional butler. Before Professor McGonagall could speak, Deborah took the lead and said, "Professor McGonagall, although I believe in the existence of magic, could you please demonstrate it?" Upon hearing this, Professor McGonagall waved her wand, and the fruits on the table grew short legs and began to dance. This magical scene made Deborah and William feel that their eyes had been opened. The subsequent conversation went very smoothly. Every year, Hogwarts has new wizards of Muggle origin, and Professor McGonagall will also receive these new students every year. So this set of procedures is already very familiar, and William and Deborah already believe in the existence of the magical world, which also saves McGonagall's effort in persuading them. "Mr. Cavendish, now that you understand everything, let's go to Diagon Alley and buy you teaching materials and equipment as soon as possible. Oh, and bring some Muggle cash, as you'll need to convert it into wizarding currency." "Okay, Professor McGonagall." William nodded obediently. A deserted alley in London. Crack. There was a loud explosion, and two figures instantly appeared in the alley. William Cavendish frowned. The experience of this apparition was really bad. With his superior physique, he was also dizzy for a moment. Apparition is a way for wizards to travel quickly. Professor McGonagall explained, but she was a little surprised to see William's expressionless face. Most people feel uncomfortable when they apparate for the first time, but Mr. Cavendish was not affected at all, which is really strange. William smiled shyly and said, "Maybe my physical fitness is a little better." "Maybe." McGregor didn't think much about it. "Let's go to the Leaky Cauldron first, and then enter Diagon Alley from there." As she said that, McGregor walked out of the alley, and William hurriedly followed. Before long, the two came to a shabby bar. This was a dirty and narrow bar, which was out of tune with the big bookstores and record stores on its left and right, and passers-by didn't even look at it, as if they couldn't see it at all. In fact, this was true. This bar was enchanted by wizards, and muggles couldn't see it at all. "This is it, let's go in," Professor McGonagall said as she pushed the door open, and William followed closely. When the two entered the bar, the originally bustling bar suddenly became quiet, and many wizards even stood up nervously. William, who saw this scene, although found it a little funny, was also moved that Professor McGonagall's students were all over the world. After all, almost all wizards in England graduated from Hogwarts. As the vice president of Hogwarts and the dean of Gryffindor, most of the wizards here were once students of Professor McGonagall. Now seeing Professor McGonagall again, they subconsciously became nervous. In the previous life, William, even though he had graduated for many years, would still be subconsciously nervous when he saw his homeroom teacher when he was in school. This may be the common feature of students in all the worlds. Of course, there were also many wizards who greeted Professor McGonagall, and Professor McGonagall smiled and nodded in response. "Professor McGonagall, would you like a drink?" Tom, the bar owner, asked Professor McGonagall with a smile. "No, Tom, I'm here to bring the new students to buy textbooks and equipment today." Professor McGonagall waved her hand and refused. "Is this the little one? He is so pretty." Tom looked at William and praised him with a smile. William smiled shyly and looked very well behaved. Professor McGonagall nodded, said goodbye to Tom, the bar owner, and led William through the bar to a small courtyard surrounded by walls. There was nothing here except a trash can and some weeds. Count 3 bricks up and 2 bricks sideways. Professor McGonagall said, tapping the wall 3 times with her wand. The brick she tapped began to shake and move, and a small hole appeared in the middle. The hole got bigger and bigger, and soon, a wide archway appeared in front of William and the others, leading to a winding cobblestone street that had no end in sight. Mr. Cavendish, remember what I did just now, and you can come to Diagon Alley by yourself in the future. Professor McGonagall turned to William and said. I'll remember that, Professor McGonagall. William nodded seriously. Okay, then let's go in and go to Gringotts to exchange currency first. Professor McGonagall said as she stepped through the archway and stepped onto the cobblestone road. William kept up with Professor McGonagall's pace, wondering if the trash can at the entrance of Diagon Alley could be collected by the system. He would try it later. After the two walked through the archway behind them suddenly became narrower, and then turned into the original solid wall. Walking into the famous Diagon Alley in the British wizarding world, the various shops on both sides of the street and the various strange and peculiar goods inside made William a little dazzled for a while. As a great noble and a wealthy man, William has seen a lot of the secular world. But as a young wizard who has just entered the wizarding world, after coming to Diagon Alley, he really feels like a country boy entering the city. But Professor McGonagall would not laugh at him. After all, she has to receive many Muggle wizards every year, and she has seen this situation many times. Not long after walking, Professor McGonagall suddenly said, "We're here at Gringotts." William retracted his wandering gaze and looked straight ahead. In front of him was a snow-white building that stood tall above the surrounding shops. Next to the shiny bronze door stood a short figure in a scarlet uniform with gold inlays. Yes, it was a goblin. I don't know what the wizards were thinking, but they actually handed over the financial lifeline of the magic world to foreigners, and these were goblins who had fought a war with them. Facts have proved that this will cause problems. For example, a certain United States used to only control its economic lifeline, but now even speech is controlled. How can we talk about freedom and democracy? Of course, these things have nothing to do with William. After all, there is tall Dumbledore to support him when the sky falls. He is just a student. Perhaps when he becomes tall in the future, he will definitely let those goblins who are causing trouble know what cruelty is. When Professor McGonagall and William entered, the goblin bowed to them. Then a second door appeared in front of them. It was silver, and there were words engraved on the two doors. Come in, stranger, but you must be careful of the consequences of greed. You will be punished most severely if you just ask for things that never belong to you. Therefore, if you want to take a fortune from our underground vault that never belonged to you, thief, you have been warned. Be careful that what you get is not treasure, but retribution. Seeing this warning, William was speechless. Everyone knows that you goblins are the most greedy. Don't you have any idea? The main hall of Gringotts. William followed Professor McGonagall to the counter, looking around curiously. He saw hundreds of goblins sitting on high stools behind a long row of counters. Some of them were weighing coins with copper scales, while others were examining gems with eyepieces, while hastily recording in a large ledger. There were countless doors in the hall, leading to different places, and many goblins were guiding people coming and going in and out of these doors. Professor McGonagall took William to an idle goblin. This is a new wizard who needs to exchange for gold galleons. The goblin behind the counter nodded, looked at William and introduced. Today, the exchange rate between galleons and British pounds is 1.5, and 1 galleon is 17 sickles, and 1 sickle is 29 copper nuts. Sir, how much do you want to exchange? William didn't care about this weird exchange system, but he was very curious about one thing, that is, whether there was a limit on the number of gold galleons that could be exchanged for pounds. This was a question he had been curious about since his last life. The settings in various fan fictions were different. Some said there was no limit, some said 70, 100, 200. Now he had a chance to verify it, so William cleared his throat and asked. Can you exchange any amount? William's words surprised the fairy, but he reacted immediately and said, "Sir, theoretically, you can exchange any amount, but in practice we have to decide based on the circumstances. What this means is that our bank has the final right of interpretation. If we want to exchange it for you, we will exchange it. If we don't want to exchange it for you, we won't exchange it. It can only be said that as expected of a bank, there is no one who saves money." Although he was not satisfied with the answer, he had to exchange it. William took out a stack of banknotes, exactly £1,000. It was not that he could not afford to exchange more, but that there was no need to change it for 200 gold galleons. The goblin behind the counter took the pounds from William's hand, counted them carefully, and put them away after confirming that they were correct. Then he took out a bag of gold galleons from behind the counter and handed it to William, and reminded him expressionlessly, "Count them carefully, we will not be responsible after you leave the counter." William nodded, but did not say anything like, "No need, I believe you," but counted them carefully. Although William was not short of money, he could not be a sucker. After the count was correct, William and Professor McGonagall left Gringotts. After leaving Gringotts, Madame Malkin's robe shop was not far away. Professor McGonagall led William directly to Madame Malkin's robe shop. "Mr. Cavendish, you can buy uniforms here. You should know what you need, right?" Hearing Professor McGonagall's question, William smiled and nodded. Of course, first-year students need 3 sets of plain black work robes, a plain black peaked hat for daytime wear, a pair of dragon skin protective gloves, and a black winter cloak with silver buckles. And all clothing must be attached with name tags, right, Professor McGonagall? Hearing William's accurate answer, Professor McGonagall nodded with satisfaction. "That's right, Mr. Cavendish has a good memory." As they were talking, William and the other had already walked into the robe shop. Madame Malkin greeted them warmly as soon as they entered the door. "Professor McGonagall, you are here, is this year's freshman?" Upon hearing this, William looked at Madame Malkin, who was a short and plump witch with a sweet smile, wearing a purple robe. Professor McGonagall also smiled and responded, "Yes, this is this year's freshman, Mr. William Cavendish. Madame Malkin, please try on the clothes for him." "Okay, Mr. Cavendish, please come here." Madame Malkin led William to the back of the shop, asked him to stand on a footstool, and then put a robe on him, pinning it to fit his body length. Then she measured the length of his arms and the width of his shoulders. After a long time of busy work, Madame Malkin finally spoke. "It's been tried on, dear." After buying the uniform and coming out of the robe shop, William and Professor McGonagall entered a bookstore called Flourish and Blots. The bookshelves here were filled with books all the way to the ceiling. There were leather-bound books as big as paving slabs, and silk-bound books as small as stamps. There was a book full of various strange symbols, and a few were wordless books. Looking at these strange books, William had an impulse for a moment and wanted to buy the entire bookstore. His grandmother Deborah loved collecting books. But he gave up this crazy idea for the time being. After all, Professor McGonagall was still by his side, so he decided to wait and see. Now he needed to buy the books he needed for school. Open double angle bracket The Standard Book of Spells, Elementary, by Miranda Goshawk. Open double angle bracket A History of Magic, by Bathilda Bagshot. Open double angle bracket Theory of Magic, by Adalbert Waffling. Open double angle bracket A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, by Emery Sweech. Open double angle bracket 1000 Wonderful Herbs and Fungi, by Felita Spar. Open double angle bracket Magic Potions and Medicinal Drinks, by Arseny Giger. Open double angle bracket Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, by Newt Scamander. Open double angle bracket The Dark Arts, A Guide to Self-Defense, by Quentin Slimber. Because Flourish and Blots offers a book delivery service, they will send books to customers via owls, so William bought a few extracurricular books. For example, A History of Hogwarts close double angle bracket open double angle bracket, A Study of the Development of Modern Witchcraft, and The Great Wizards of the 20th Century, and so on. Most of these extracurricular books are historical biographies. For William, these books can give him a general understanding of the wizarding world, rather than just the tip of the iceberg he knew in his previous life. After William left the delivery address to the bookstore, he checked out and left with Professor McGonagall. After that, they bought a telescope, a balance, and a set of small crystal medicine bottles from Weezacre's magic supply store. Then they went back to Partridge's cauldron shop and bought a pewter crucible. Finally, they arrived at the famous Ollivander's wand shop, the arms dealer of the wizarding world. This is a small and shabby shop. The golden sign on the door has peeled off. It reads, Ollivander, making fine wands since 382 BC. In the dusty window, on the faded purple cushion, there is a lonely wand. Looking at the words on the sign, William couldn't help laughing and said, the ancestors of the Ollivander family should be Romans. Hearing this, Professor McGonagall asked curiously, Mr. Cavendish, why do you say that? The name Ollivander is probably related to olive, but olive trees are not native to Britain, but to Mediterranean countries. Combined with the time of 382 BC, I guess Mr. Ollivander's ancestors were Romans. As a collector with a family heritage, William has studied history, culture, and art appreciation to avoid making mistakes when collecting. As they were talking, William and Professor McGonagall had already stepped into Ollivander's wand shop. The shop was very small, with nothing but a bench. Thousands of narrow boxes on the shelves were almost stacked to the ceiling, making people feel that they would collapse at any time. This gentleman's guess is correct. The ancestors of our Ollivander family are indeed Romans. Ollivander means someone who owns an olive wood wand. A soft voice suddenly sounded, startling William. An old man with white hair and beard and silver eyes walked out from behind the shelf. This was Garrick Ollivander, one of the 3 greatest wand makers in Europe. Good afternoon. Oh, it's you, Minerva. Ollivander smiled even more enthusiastically when he saw Professor McGonagall. Good afternoon, Garrick. Professor McGonagall smiled and replied. Minerva, I am very happy to see you every summer, because your appearance means that another wand has met its ideal owner. Although Ollivander is eccentric, he has a rigorous pursuit of his profession and is fascinated by the connection between wands and wizards. Professor McGonagall is accustomed to this. After all, she has to deal with Ollivander every year, and it is no longer strange. Garrick, help this kid choose a wand. Minerva, the wizard does not choose his wand, the wand chooses its wizard. Ollivander emphasized solemnly. Well, the wand chooses its wizard. Professor McGonagall did not argue. Ollivander nodded with satisfaction and looked at William. Learned little wizard, can you tell me your name? William Cavendish. Okay, Mr. Cavendish, come here, let me see. Ollivander pulled out a long tape measure with silver markings from his pocket. Which arm do you use the wand with? Right hand. William replied simply. Raise your arms, okay. Ollivander began to measure William, first from the shoulder to the fingertips, then from the wrist to the elbow, shoulder to the floor, knee to armpit, and finally the head. As he measured, he said, every Ollivander wand has a super powerful magical substance, which is its essence. We used unicorn hair, phoenix tail feathers and dragon heart nerves. Every Ollivander's wand is unique, as no 2 unicorns, dragons or phoenixes are exactly alike. Of course, if you used a wand that should have belonged to another wizard, you would never get such a good effect. Ollivander chattered on and on about his wand-making philosophy, and the tape measure was operating automatically. The whole process did not look like choosing a wand, but like a tailor taking measurements for clothes. William didn't know what the use of measuring these data was. After all, an 11-year-old child is in the period of growth, and these data will soon be outdated. William guessed that maybe these data could be used to calculate some body proportions. A person's body proportions should not change much. Of course, this was just his guess, and he didn't know the specific facts. Ollivander turned and walked towards the shelf. After a while, he came back with several wooden boxes in his arms. Okay, Mr. Cavendish, try this one, black walnut, phoenix feather, 11 inches long, sharp and powerful, try to wave it. William took the wand, but did not rush to wave it. Instead, out of the habit of a collector, he began to observe it carefully. The appearance of this wand is very beautiful, the dark brown wand is calm and majestic, and the texture is delicate and soft, which is in line with William's aesthetic taste. Seeing that William did not move, Ollivander thought William was nervous, so he smiled and encouraged. Mr. Cavendish, don't be too nervous, just follow your heart and try it out. Hearing this, William smiled shyly, without any excuses, and waved the wand in his hand. Pow! A ball of fire burst out and almost burned Ollivander's beard. Ah, Mr. Ollivander, I'm so sorry. William said to Ollivander awkwardly. It's okay, it's none of your business. Ollivander took the wand from William's hand and handed him another. Try this one, made of ebony and dragon heart nerve, 9 inches long, unique and tough. This time, there was no fire, but a strong wind blew, and the whole store was filled with smoke, and the wooden boxes on the shelves fell to the ground. This made William even more embarrassed, but Ollivander was still not angry. He cast a spell and everything returned to normal. Don't worry, let's keep trying. Vine wood, unicorn hair, 12 inches, hidden and farsighted. This time, before William could wave his wand, Ollivander took it away. No, try this one, made of you and unicorn hair, 9 3/4 inches, brave and outstanding. William tried one after another, but Ollivander was not annoyed at all, but seemed to be getting happier and happier. What a picky guest. However, the pickier he is, the more it shows that the wizard is extraordinary. Mr. Cavendish will surely achieve extraordinary success in the future. Let me think about it. Oh, I got it, how could I have forgotten it? Hornbeam and unicorn tail hair, 11 1/4 inches long, a sole, pure, passionate hobby, my own wand is made of this material, try it now. William took the wand mechanically. In fact, this was the 19th wand he had tried, and he almost had muscle memory. However, when he got the wand, William instantly felt at ease, and his intuition told him that this was the wand. After trying so many wands, William has gained some experience. If the wand does not match him, the magic power will be very agitated, and the magic used is mostly destructive. Mr. Ollivander has cleaned up the shop for this reason. But if it feels average, the wand will at most spray some smoke or water. Of course, there are some wands that are barely suitable, which are much more docile and will emit soft white light, or shoot out golden stars like fireworks. But only this wand, when William waved it, actually used transfiguration directly, turning an empty box into a white dove. A wonderful transfiguration. Professor McGonagall smiled on her serious face. As the transfiguration professor at Hogwarts, she must be very happy to see William's talent for transfiguration. Mr. Ollivander even shouted loudly, "Oh, great, it suits you very well." "Thank you," William said with a smile. William spent 7 galleons to buy the wand. Mr. Ollivander bowed and sent them out of the store. It was already past 4 o'clock in the afternoon. William and Professor McGonagall rushed to the last stop of this trip, Eeyore Owl Shop. The store looked dark, probably because owls like this kind of environment. When William left the store, he was holding a big bird cage in his hand, and there was a barn owl in the cage. After all, there was no telephone in Hogwarts, so William could only write letters in the future, which was very inconvenient without an owl. William also named the owl, Iris. "Okay, Mr. Cavendish, we've bought everything. I'll take you back." Professor McGonagall took William and used apparition again, returning directly to William's manor. This time, William felt no ripples, and he didn't even frown. His strong physical fitness saved him a lot of troubles. "Mr. Cavendish, I have to remind you of something." Professor McGonagall looked at William seriously. "Please go ahead, Professor McGonagall." William pretended to listen carefully. "Mr. Cavendish, I know you are new to magic and you must be very curious about it. I believe that with your wisdom and talent, you will have no problem learning some simple spells by yourself." William was very pleased to hear this, but he knew that there would be a turning point next. "But remember, you can only practice magic in private, and you can't let others see you use magic, except your relatives. The Ministry of Magic stipulates that young wizards cannot cast spells outside of school, but the period before the first enrollment is an exception, so cherish it." William nodded and promised seriously, "Okay, Professor McGonagall, don't worry, I will never use magic in front of others." "Okay, this is for you." Professor McGonagall took out a letter. "This is your ticket to Hogwarts, September 1st, King's Cross Station, platform 9 3/4. William took the letter, and Professor McGonagall briefly explained the location of platform 9 3/4. She did this every year. "Mr. Cavendish, do you have any questions? If not, I'll take my leave and look forward to seeing you at Hogwarts in a month." "Professor McGonagall, I have no questions, but I am really sorry to bother you today." Please allow me to show my hospitality and invite you to my home for a cup of tea and a simple dinner. William spoke sincerely, and at the same time he observed the noble etiquette meticulously. Professor McGonagall was stunned when she heard this, but she only hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said, "In that case, thank you very much for the hospitality, Mr. Cavendish." The reason why Professor McGonagall did not reject William's invitation was because she had a good impression of William. She thought William was polite, talented, had a good image and temperament, and was also smart and well behaved. In addition, it was already late and it was indeed dinner time. They had to go back to Hogwarts to eat, so it didn't matter where they ate. But soon, Professor McGonagall found that this was really different. The magnificent restaurant, the 5-meter-long dining table, and the table were filled with delicious food, but there were only 3 people eating: William, McGonagall and Deborah. The food on the table was clearly divided. One side was French food, the other side was Chinese food, but there was no local British food. This was because Deborah liked French food, William liked Chinese food, but they didn't like British food. So this scene appeared. Although it looks strange, the meal was a great pleasure for both the host and the guests. William's grandmother Deborah was of similar age to Professor McGonagall, and they got along well. Even though their living environments were completely different, they were both managers, so it was normal for them to exchange experiences. After the meal, Professor McGonagall and Deborah became friends, and they even agreed to communicate by letter in the future. William just felt that this world was really wonderful. After Professor McGonagall left, old lady Deborah was still a little reluctant, so William chatted with her about what she had seen and heard today, which made the old lady feel better. At 9 o'clock in the evening, William lay in bed, rubbing his wand unconsciously in his hand, his mind already immersed in the system. System, collect the magic wand in my hand. Ding. Collect the extraordinary 5-star Hornbeam wand, which rewards the host with magic power +5, money +1600 galleons, and spellcasting skills, advanced. It's only 5 stars, it seems it's not the wand passed down from Ollivander's ancestors. William complained casually, because he had read too many fan fictions with this setting. The next second, William felt a trance in front of his eyes, and a lot of spellcasting skills appeared in his mind. And these spellcasting skills they are summarized by him after a long period of practice, without the slightest hindrance. As we all know, when wizards cast magic, they don't wave their wands randomly, but according to a specific trajectory, and there is also a special rhythm when chanting spells, otherwise they can't cast magic. Spellcasting skills are how wizards can quickly master these things. A wizard with superb skills can learn a new magic faster and safer than a wizard with poor skills. Of course, when a wizard has a deeper understanding of magic, then casting magic does not need to be so rigid, and can even cast silently, and even further cast without a wand. But even so, the power of silent casting and wandless casting is generally not as good as normal casting. So for beginners, spellcasting skills are still indispensable. System, what is the level of advanced spellcasting skills? William was curious about this question, so he asked the system. Ding. Advanced spellcasting skills are roughly equivalent to the level of outstanding Hogwarts graduates. Excellent graduate level, that's okay. By the way, the system has saved everything I bought today that can be saved. Ding. Collect the extraordinary 1-star creature Owl Elise, and reward the host with magic +1, money +100 galleons, and the innate ability Night Vision. William felt his eyes slightly hot, but soon returned to normal. Innate ability Night Vision. It doesn't feel any different. Is it because of the light in the room? William squinted and muttered. Then turn off the lights and give it a try. William thought so and stood up to turn off all the lights in the room. As the last light in the room was turned off, darkness instantly enveloped. At the same time, William's pupils almost became a vertical thin line. At this time, in William's vision, although the room was much darker, just like a rainy day, he could still see clearly. This talent is really good. It will be much more convenient to go on a night tour in Hogwarts in the future. William has not even gone to Hogwarts yet, but he is already thinking about going on a night tour. He is really a restless guy. System, can't I collect the other things I bought today? William waited for a long time, but saw that the system did not move. I couldn't help but ask. Ding. Cannot collect. Why? Ding. Other items do not have special properties. Okay. William nodded helplessly. There was nothing special about books, textbooks, uniforms, gloves, crucibles and balances. After all, they were all standard equipment. But the wand and owl were different. They should be unique, so they met the collection standards of the system. After thinking about this, William knew what he should collect in the future. The next morning, when William came to the restaurant, his grandmother Deborah was already waiting for him. "Dear, did you have a good rest last night?" Deborah greeted with a smile. "Of course, what about you, Grandma?" "Not bad, but I thought you would be too excited to sleep, my dear little wizard William." William didn't care about his grandmother Deborah's teasing at all. Even if the servants heard it, it didn't matter. As long as William didn't use magic in front of them, they would just treat it as a joke between the two of them. "Grandma, you seem to be very interested in magic. I bought several books on the history of magic yesterday. Would you like to take a look?" William did not refute Deborah, but said this instead. Hearing William's words, Deborah nodded with great interest. "Okay, I am indeed very interested in magic, and it's a good opportunity for me to read some books to learn more about it." The reason why Deborah is interested in the magic world is actually mostly due to her worry about William. As the saying goes, fear comes from the unknown. For Deborah, the magic world is unknown, so she must be very worried about William going to the magic world to study. If William went to London to study, Deborah's worries would definitely be greatly reduced. After all, she is very familiar with London. Therefore, Deborah would want to understand the magic world, so that even if she still has no personal experience, at least she has an understanding of it on paper, and it is not an unknown world. And William thought of these. In order not to worry his grandmother Deborah, he took the initiative to ask Deborah to read books related to the history of magic. This is a tacit understanding between the two generations, needless to say. After breakfast, William told the servants not to disturb them, and went to his study with his grandmother Deborah. The books bought yesterday were delivered by owls in the evening and stacked on William's desk. It looked like a thick stack. William took out A History of Magic from it. Close double angle bracket, open double angle bracket, A History of Hogwarts, and handed them to Deborah. "Grandma, please read these two books. One is about the history of the wizarding world, and the other is about the history of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." "Okay, I'll listen to you." Deborah took the book, smiled and nodded, then she said, "Dear, I'll read in your study, you don't mind, do you?" William shook his head and said, "Of course I don't mind, you can come anytime." "That's good," Deborah said as she walked to the desk and sat down, opened History of Magic, and began to read it carefully. William did not disturb her, sat behind another desk, took out Magic Theory, and began to study on his own. In the past few years since the system was turned on, William has improved his quality to a superhuman level by collecting antique artworks and getting rewards. The average spirit of ordinary people is only 10 points, while William's is as high as 85 points, which makes him have a memory and understanding far beyond ordinary people. It can be said that he has the ability to remember everything he has seen and draw inferences from one example. Naturally, William was the legendary spirit of the gods when he was in school. The academic genius, seemingly playing every day, but always ranked first in academic performance. In addition, William, who was only 11 years old, had at least reached the advanced or even master level in art appreciation, horse riding, fighting, shooting and other skills, which shows his strong learning ability. William opened The Theory of Magic, written by Adelbert Waffling. The first chapter was the basic rules of magic, and the first rule was, those who arbitrarily tamper with the deepest secrets, the source of life, the essence of the self, must be prepared to bear the most extreme and dangerous consequences. Seeing this, William couldn't help but think of Voldemort. This guy must have violated this rule. He followed the basic rules, and he did bear the most extreme and dangerous consequences. From a handsome, wise and powerful wizard, he became a noseless and mentally ill Dark Lord. He was also teased by fate. In pursuit of immortality, he only lived to be 72 years old. This age is not as long as some Muggle elders, not to mention the long-lived people in the wizarding world. Not to mention Nicholas Flamel and his wife who are over 600 years old. After all, they have the Philosopher's Stone. Let's talk about Armando Dippet, the headmaster of Hogwarts from the 1940s to the 1960s. He didn't have the Philosopher's Stone, but he still lived for more than 300 years. It can be seen how pitiful Voldemort is. If he didn't pursue, if he wanted to live forever, with his strength, it was impossible for him to die at the age of 72. William's mental strength was too strong, and his thoughts diverged too quickly. Sometimes he could not help but associate a lot of things. This might be the only drawback. Focusing his mind and abandoning distracting thoughts, William immersed himself in learning again. He planned to learn the theory first, and then start practical exercises, so that he could know the facts and the reasons. In the next month, William's every day was full of arrangements, learning theoretical knowledge in the morning, practical exercises in the afternoon, and reading historical biographies in the evening. In this way, time came to the end of August, and Hogwarts was about to start school. On August 27, William said goodbye to his grandmother and came to London. In the past month, William has taught himself all the first-grade courses and reached a very high level. He also learned a lot of spells from the basic spells. It can be said that in terms of magic power, he is not inferior to the 4th and 5th grade students of Hogwarts. If William's inhuman physical fitness is taken into account, then it can be said that most adult wizards are not his opponents. After all, with his speed and reaction, most wizards can't hit him at all. And magic that can't hit people, no matter how powerful it is useless. It is precisely because of such strength that William has the confidence to do this. Of course, it is also to avoid delaying the little wizards of Hogwarts from buying teaching materials and equipment. That's right, his target is the leaky cauldron. The trash can next to the wall of the small patio in the backyard, the trash can that serves as a reference coordinate. It's not that William has any quirks of liking trash cans, he just wants to experiment with his ideas. Diagon Alley is the most prosperous commercial street in the British wizarding world, and many first-line brands in the wizarding world have flagship stores here. As the reference coordinate of the entrance mechanism of Diagon Alley, this trash can is no longer just a trash can. It is a landmark and a landscape. It can be seen that this trash can is special and has collection value. Then it is obvious that as a collector with a collector's system, William will not let it go. After taking a taxi, William came to the big bookstore next to the leaky cauldron. After all, the taxi driver didn't know where the leaky cauldron was, but he knew where the bookstore next to it was. Stepping into the leaky cauldron, it was still dark and dirty, filled with the smell of alcohol and cigarettes, and there were many strange wizards sitting there. William frowned. Even though he didn't have mysophobia, he still didn't have a good impression of this place. "Little guest, would you like a glass of butter beer?" Tom, the bar owner, asked William with a smile while holding an empty glass. "No, I'm too young to drink." Even though he disliked the dirty place, William still politely smiled and declined. Hearing this, Tom immediately explained. Of course, but although my butter beer is called beer, it is actually just a sweet drink and does not contain alcohol. So that's how it is, but no, I have something else to do today, I will definitely come and try it when I have time in the future." William suddenly realized, but still smiled and declined Boss Tom. "Well, I look forward to your next visit," Tom said with some regret. "I will definitely do it next time." William smiled and nodded, then walked quickly across the bar and headed towards the small patio. There was nothing here except 4 walls, a trash can, and weeds all over the ground. William came to the trash can and took out his wand. "Count 3 bricks up and 2 bricks horizontally, this should be it." He tapped the wall 3 times with his wand, and the brick he tapped began to shake and move, and soon an archway appeared. William quickly passed through the archway and came to Diagon Alley, and the archway behind him turned into a wall again. This time when he came to Diagon Alley, his main goal was the trash can, but since he was already here, he might as well go shopping first, because the trash can was there and it wouldn't move away. Unlike the last time he came to Diagon Alley, this time there was no Professor McGonagall to accompany him, so William was freer and could buy whatever he wanted. A complete set of textbooks for Hogwarts grades 2 to 7, as well as various extracurricular books. Open double angle bracket Ancient Magical Runes close double angle bracket. Open double angle bracket Advanced Rune Translation close double angle bracket. Open double angle bracket. Basic spells for dealing with hyperactive and restless animals. Close double angle bracket. In addition to books, William also bought several magical animals. Of course, they were just very common magical animals. Puffy, shapeshifting rabbits, ravens, these were all bought by William from a pet store. They basically have no great abilities, and can only be used to be cute or deliver messages. As for those dangerous magical animals, most of them are banned from sale, or are sold after being disassembled into parts. If William wants to collect them, he can only think of another way. After a wanton shopping, William was finally satisfied and started the last activity, which was also the theme of this trip. In fact, this is not difficult, but it would be embarrassing if someone finds out. After all, stealing trash cans is not a glorious thing no matter how you look at it, so it must be foolproof. The closest to the entrance of Diagon Alley is a cauldron shop, and William strolled in. The owner, Patchy, greeted enthusiastically. "You are a student of Hogwarts, right? What kind of cauldron do you want? We have it here." William smiled and replied, "Yes, I'll take a look myself first, and ask the boss if I don't understand." "Okay, but generally the crucibles you students use are made of pewter, standard size number 2. Patchy said casually, and then went to greet other customers. William nodded, then leaned over to the window near the door to look, and muttered from time to time. But if someone listened closely, they would find that they were just some meaningless syllables. In fact, William's attention was on the street outside, especially on the passers-by walking towards the exit. William observed for 10 minutes and finally found a good opportunity. No one came to this section of the street near the exit. He picked up a copper crucible and found the boss, then quickly paid the bill, turned around and left, all in one go. After leaving the crucible shop, William walked to the exit in 3 or 2 steps and left Diagon Alley. Coming to the small patio of the leaky cauldron, William took out his wand and pointed it at the trash can. "Shrink quickly." As William cursed, the trash can on the ground shrank to the size of a thumb. William picked up the small trash can, put it in his pocket, and walked towards the bar as usual. When he passed the bar, he even smiled and greeted the boss Tom, and then left leisurely. Half an hour later, a furious curse came from the patio into the bar. "Who on earth stole the trash can? Which brick is it?" When someone in the bar noticed that the trash can was missing, William had already gone home. "Collect this reference coordinate bucket." William sat on the sofa in the bedroom, with a thumb-sized trash can on the table in front of him. Ding! Collect the extraordinary 3-star reference coordinate trash can and reward the host. Ding! Collect the extraordinary 3-star reference coordinate trash can, and reward the host with +3 magic power, +400 galleons of money, and a suitcase 400 cubic meters with a traceless stretch spell. The same model as Newt's. But it's definitely not as good as Newt's, after all, it's only 400 cubic meters. But it's not bad, it's exactly what I need. Although William has a system space, he can only put things rewarded by the system, and the system space will refuse to accept other things. However, William now has an interesting idea. If you put the things in a suitcase and then put the suitcase into the system space, wouldn't it be possible to fix the bug? Of course, William also thought that it might fail, such as the things in the box being thrown out by the system space, or the box simply cannot be put in. This is all possible. However, only through practice can the real result be tested. William took out the suitcase from the system space. This suitcase is a brown suitcase. From the outside, it looks very ordinary. Opening the suitcase, it is the same as an ordinary suitcase, with nothing inside. Quote? William was a little confused. Didn't he cast the traceless extension charm? Why is it still like this? Could it be a disguise? Is there some mechanism that can change it into its true appearance? He thought so and began to check carefully. Unexpectedly, it was true. William found a button on the inside of the handle of the box. It was flush with the surrounding area and there was no abruptness when he carried it. When William pressed the button bounced back and was higher than the handle. At the same time, the bottom of the suitcase suddenly opened, revealing a hole with a ladder inside. Seeing this scene, William knew he had found the right one. Hey, it's quite hidden, but I like it. After complaining with a smile, he crawled into the cave along the ladder. When William jumped down the ladder, he saw an empty room. According to William's visual estimation, the length and width of the room were 10 meters, and the height was 4 meters, which was exactly 400 cubic meters. There was nothing inside except a ladder. William walked around casually and turned to leave. After all, there was nothing to see inside. But William had already planned how to transform it so that it could be used as a secret base in the future. After getting out of the box, William first closed the mechanism, then casually took a teacup and put it in it, and finally closed the suitcase and put it back into the system space. William's face lit up. He could take back the system space, and the next step was to see if there were any consequences. After waiting for a while, William took the suitcase out of the system space again. Then he couldn't wait to open the suitcase, and the teacup inside was still lying there quietly, without any change. William waved his hand excitedly. Yes. It's okay, but we still have to experiment with living things. Thinking of this, William stood up and walked quickly to the window, opened the window and looked at the trees outside. The birds on the trees were chirping. The bird is coming. With a wave of William's wand, a bird on the tree flew uncontrollably towards William. The flying spell was a spell that William mastered. He caught the bird and put away his wand. Then it was another experiment, but this time it failed. When the bird was put into the suitcase, the system space refused to accept the suitcase. It seems that living things cannot be taken in, but it's no big deal, the experiment is at least half successful. William was in a good mood and was not troubled by this problem. In the next 3 days, William was busy transforming the space in the suitcase. Bedroom, study, alchemy room, collection room. It can be said that after William's transformation, this suitcase has become a must-have artifact for home travel. When everything was packed, the time came to August 31st, and tomorrow was the day to go to Hogwarts. For William, Hogwarts is a familiar yet unfamiliar place, a place he yearns for but is wary of. Familiar because he had read the entire Harry Potter series of books and movies in his previous life. Strange because he had never really come into contact with Hogwarts. All his understanding came from books and movies, and this is a real world. The yearning is because of magic and the stories that happened in Hogwarts. The vigilance is because he knows that Voldemort is lurking in Hogwarts, and the risk factor is not low. This complicated mood made William insomniac, and he didn't fall asleep until very late. So of course, he must have gotten up late. William didn't wake up until after 9 in the morning, and it was almost 10 o'clock after he washed up. Finally, he didn't even have time to eat breakfast, so he asked the driver to drive him to King's Cross Station. It was already 10:40 when he entered the station, and his ticket showed that the train to Hogwarts would depart on time at 11 o'clock. William carried a suitcase in his hand and walked quickly between platforms 9 and 10. Because he didn't need to put the suitcase into the system space, William's owl and other pets were all packed in the suitcase. That's why he only carried one suitcase. When William rushed to the middle of platforms 9 and 10, he saw a black-haired boy with a white owl pushing a suitcase. The boy looked a little panicked, his eyes kept looking around, and there was a layer of sweat on his head. Isn't this Harry Potter? William was very sure that this was Harry Potter. It was really his appearance and his white owl that fit the image so well. Judging from his appearance, he should be looking for platform 9 3/4. But the careless Hagrid only gave him the ticket, but didn't tell him the location of the platform. Since he met Harry Potter, the savior, William simply got to know him. Hello, are you looking for platform 9 3/4? William walked up to Harry and asked in a low voice. Hearing the key word, 9 3/4, Harry's heart was pounding, and he quickly looked at the person who was speaking. So good looking. Harry exclaimed in his heart. Even though they were both boys, Harry thought the boy in front of him was really good looking. The boy had black hair like him, but it was not as messy as his hair, but was combed meticulously. A pair of bright and deep blue eyes, as clear and transparent as a lake, impeccable delicate features, and a tall and stylish posture, he was simply not like an ordinary person. Looking at the dazed Harry in front of him, William couldn't help but waved. Hello. Harry came back to his senses and quickly replied, Yes, I'm looking for platform 9 3/4. Are you also a student of Hogwarts? Yes, I am William Cavendish, a new student at Hogwarts this year. Hello, I'm Harry Potter. Harry Potter then said, "William, do you know where platform 9 3/4 is? We're going to be late." "I know, don't you know? Didn't the professor who was in charge of guiding you tell you?" William asked in surprise. Harry Potter scratched his head and laughed awkwardly when he heard this. Hagrid may have forgotten. "Oh, Hagrid was the one who took me in. He was the key keeper and gamekeeper of Hogwarts." "Okay, then just follow me, we are indeed going to be late." Just as William finished speaking, another family came to the platform. Judging from their red hair, they should be the Weasley family. The appearance of the Weasley family easily attracted the attention of William and Harry. 4 red-haired boys, each pushing a large suitcase and carrying an owl, looked exactly like Harry. They were obviously little wizards going to Hogwarts. Not only that, the muggles they mentioned in their conversation further confirmed their wizard identities. However, William and Harry were just curious and did not rush to talk to them. "Let's go, Harry." William carried his suitcase and walked straight to the wall between platforms 9 and 10. "Okay." Harry hurriedly pushed the suitcase to catch up with William. But soon Harry found that there was no road in front of William, and he would hit the wall if he went forward. But William's footsteps did not stop, as if he did not see the wall in front of him. Seeing that William was about to hit the wall, Harry hurriedly opened his mouth to remind him, "William." But before he could finish his words, William in front of him disappeared into the wall. That's right. Harry was sure he was not mistaken. He disappeared into the wall. Harry couldn't believe it. William just felt that he had pierced through an invisible membrane, and then appeared in a wrought iron archway. After walking out of the archway, William saw a platform full of passengers, and a crimson steam locomotive was parked beside it. The sign on the train read, "Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. William turned around, but found that Harry didn't follow him in. Instead, he saw the words, "Platform 9 3/4, written above the archway. In fact, students at Hogwarts didn't take the train to school in the past. Of course, people hadn't invented trains at that time. They used to get to school in any way they found interesting. Some students chose to ride brooms, and some used magic carts, which later evolved into carriages. Some people tried to apparate, but usually ended up miserably, because the castle and the campus were protected by anti-apparition spells. Others choose to ride on various magical creatures, and there are descendants of those magical creatures in the school's forbidden forest. Although these different magical transportation methods have caused many accidents and even casualties, it is still the responsibility of parents to take their children to school. It was not until the implementation of the International Statute of Secrecy in 1692 that it was forced to stop. At that time, how students could secretly go to Hogwarts became the top priority for the Ministry of Magic to solve. As a result, portkeys became their way of travel, and a large number of portkeys were deployed all over the UK. However, every year, 1/3 of students still cannot arrive at school. Some missed the time when the portkeys took effect, and some people even couldn't find the portkeys. After all, the portkeys were too inconspicuous. Even more unfortunately, many students are portkey sick, so in the first few days of school every year, the hospital wards are often full, and they are full of students who are trying to overcome excitement and nausea and vomiting constantly. Of course, there is a more reliable way to go to school, that is, flow powder, but all the successive headmasters of Hogwarts refused to open it because they did not want the school's protection measures to be threatened. In order to solve this thorny problem, the then Minister of Magic, Adeline Gome, finally proposed a very bold and controversial solution. She was very interested in Muggle inventions and saw the potential of trains. In the end, the Hogwarts Express appeared, which was the largest operation of the Ministry of Magic to date. It involved 167 forgetfulness spells and the largest record of hidden spells in British history. On the morning after these records, a gleaming scarlet steam locomotive and carriages shocked the residents of Hogsmeade, who didn't even know there was a train station in the village. In crew, there were several confused Muggle railway workers who always felt as if they had forgotten something important, and the uncomfortable feeling kept haunting them until the end of the year. Therefore, the Hogwarts Express may be the result of the Ministry of Magic's Free Muggle. Of course, these materials must be kept as top secret in the Ministry of Magic, and ordinary people would not know the inside story at all. William can know this because he has the memory of his previous life. Just when William's thoughts were flying, Harry suddenly rushed in with his eyes closed. If William hadn't dodged quickly, he would have almost bumped into him. Harry opened his eyes and saw William staring at him with unfriendly eyes. He immediately asked in confusion, "William, what's wrong with you?" William was a little helpless when he heard this. How could this kid be so blind? But forget it. It's okay, just get in the car and find a seat first. Oh, there are so many people here. Harry followed William and walked towards the back of the train. The front carriage was already packed with students. Some of them leaned out of the windows to talk to their families, and some were playing in their seats. As William and Harry passed by, they heard a round-faced boy say, "Grandma, I lost my toad again." "Oh, Neville." The old lady next to him sighed. Hearing this conversation, William couldn't help but take a closer look at the boy. Is this the future Gryffindor sword master? He looked stupid. Passing Neville and his grandmother, the two continued to walk to the back and finally found an empty compartment at the end of the train. William walked in first and put his suitcase on the luggage rack. Then he saw Harry dragging his suitcase towards the door. He wanted to lift the suitcase, but his skinny arms and legs couldn't lift it at all. "Do you need help?" William asked. "William, please give me a hand, it's too heavy." Harry nodded. William stood up and walked over, and easily lifted Harry's suitcase with one hand. The heavy suitcase for Harry seemed nothing in William's hand. When William put Harry's suitcase away, he turned around and saw Harry looking stunned, his eyes full of disbelief. "Harry, come in and sit down, what are you doing standing outside?" Hearing William's words, Harry hurried into the box and exclaimed, "William, you are so strong." "It's nothing, I'm naturally strong." William laughed casually. Not long after the two sat down, a whistle sounded and the train started. Suddenly there was a knock on the door, and then the sliding door of the compartment opened, and a red-haired child walked in. "Is anyone here?" he asked, pointing to the empty seat next to Harry. "Everywhere else is full." After William and Harry shook their heads to indicate that no one was there, Ron breathed a sigh of relief and sat down next to Harry. "Hello, my name is Ron Weasley, and I am a freshman at Hogwarts this year. Are you freshmen too?" Ron greeted William and the others as soon as he sat down. "William Cavendish is also a freshman this year." William nodded. "My name is Harry Potter, and I am also a freshman this year." Harry also said. Hearing Harry Potter's name, Ron exclaimed instantly, "Harry Potter. You said your name is Harry Potter. The boy who survived." "Ah, I think so." Harry was a little embarrassed, but he had encountered this situation before in the leaky cauldron, so he had some experience. "You really, Ron pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry brushed aside a lock of hair on his forehead, revealing a lightning-shaped scar. Ron's eyes widened immediately, and even William couldn't help but take a look. It really looked like a lightning symbol. Is this what the mysterious man did? Ron couldn't help asking. "Yes, but I don't remember it anymore." Harry was a little helpless. "Don't remember anything at all?" Ron asked anxiously. "Well, I just remember there were lots of green lights, and nothing else." Harry looked troubled. "Harry, maybe I can tell you something about you." William suddenly spoke. Hearing this, Harry and Ron looked at William in surprise. Harry hurriedly asked, "William, do you really know about me?" William nodded. "Yes, but I also learned about you through books, and I don't know whether what is said in the book is true or false, you can just listen to it as a story. Regardless of whether it is true or not, William, please tell me what the book says." "Okay." William cleared his throat, and Harry and Ron stared at him intently, obviously curious about what William was going to say next. "The cause of the incident was a prophecy." "Prophecy?" Harry asked doubtfully. "That's right, the prophecy mentioned that a boy would be born at the end of the 7th month, with powers unknown to the Dark Lord, and his parents had escaped death from the Dark Lord many times." Harry nodded and confirmed, "My birthday is indeed July 31st, which means I was born at the end of the 7th month." Ron also looked as if he had suddenly realized something. Although he had heard of Harry Potter's deeds before, it was limited to Harry Potter killing the mysterious man, but he didn't know the details. Could it be that the mysterious man wanted to kill Harry because of this prophecy? That's right, after the Dark Lord knew this prophecy, he selected Harry as his opponent after a round of screening and tried to kill him. William continued. The Dark Lord found Harry, and Harry's parents were killed by the Dark Lord in order to protect him. But the Dark Lord's spell didn't work on Harry, so Harry became famous because of this. That's why people call you the boy who lived. I have heard Hagrid talk about the latter, but William, does the book explain why the spell failed on me? Harry pursed his lips and stared at William, hoping to get an answer. Ron was also very curious about this question and looked at William eagerly. William shook his head and replied with regret, "Sorry, this question is not recorded in the book. It just says that the Dark Lord disappeared after that." Hearing this, both of them showed disappointed expressions. But, William hesitated to speak. But what? Harry and Ron asked in unison. William glanced at the two of them and then said, "But I guess the mysterious power in Harry might be a kind of magic, which was imposed on him by Harry's parents to protect him. Of course, this is just my guess." Harry and Ron thought about it. William's guess made sense. "Well, that's all I know about Harry from the book." "William, are all your family wizards?" Harry asked curiously. After all, in his opinion, William knew too much. William shook his head. "No, I am the only wizard in my family. Before I received the letter from Hogwarts, I didn't even know there were wizards in the world." "Ron, your whole family should be wizards." William turned to look at Ron. Ron nodded. "Oh, yes, I think so. My mother has a distant cousin who is an accountant, but we never talk about him." Harry also looked at Ron with interest. "Then you must have learned a lot of magic, right?" Ron did not answer Harry's question. After all, he really didn't know any magic, but he didn't want to show his weakness in front of new friends. So, he changed the subject and said, "I heard that you later lived with Muggles, how were they?" Harry's attention was indeed diverted, and he only heard him say, "It's terrible. Of course not everyone is like this, but my aunt and uncle and cousin are terrible. I wish I had 3 wizard brothers. 5. I am the 6th one in my family to go to Hogwarts." Ron looked unhappy. William laughed and teased, "Your family is really prosperous." "Yeah, but if you have 5 brothers, you'll never have anything new. I wear Bill's old robes, Charlie's old wand, and Percy's discarded mice." Ron looked resentful. William sympathized with Ron, even though he was the only child in the family and didn't have these troubles at all. Ron took out a fat gray mouse from his inner pocket. It was Sleep. Its name is Scabbers. It is useless now. It sleeps all day long. Percy became a prefect. My dad gave him an owl. They couldn't afford it. I mean, they gave me the mouse. Ron's ears turned red. He seemed to think he talked too much and started looking out the window. William saw Ron's embarrassment, but he didn't think it was a big deal. Although he was born rich in this life, he was also an ordinary family in his previous life and worried about money. Harry didn't think it was a big deal that he couldn't afford an owl. After all, he was penniless a month ago and even lived worse than Ron. Thinking of this, Harry told Ron the truth, saying that he always wore Dudley's old clothes and had never received a decent birthday present. This seemed to make Ron feel much better. In the compartment, William and the other two were chatting happily. The train had already left London, and the time was about 12:30. Suddenly, there was a loud noise of clacking in the aisle, and a smiling woman with dimples pushed open the compartment door and asked, "Darling, do you want to buy some food for the car?" William hadn't eaten anything in the morning, and he was really hungry, so he got up and walked over. Harry was the same, he hadn't eaten anything in the morning, so he followed him over. Ron's ears were red again, and he muttered that he brought sandwiches. Although William had made a lot of purchases in Diagon Alley before, it was limited to books, magical beasts, potion materials, etc., and he didn't pay any attention to food and play. At this time, he saw the snacks in the wizarding world, which were really strange. BB multi-flavor beans, blowing super bubble gum, chocolate frog, pumpkin pie, crucible cakes, licorice wands. William let Harry choose first, and then Harry bought some of each, paying the saleswoman 11 sickles and 7 copper nuts. After Harry finished shopping, William bought the entire cart of food, which was not much, only costing 2 galleons. William's physical fitness was far superior to that of ordinary people, so he must have eaten more. Ron was dumbfounded at this time. How could these two guys be richer than each other? Is this how they buy snacks? Or are they so hungry that they can eat so much at once? Are you hungry? Ron said in a dry voice. I'm starving, Harry said as he took a big bite of pumpkin pie. I am indeed a little hungry, William replied with a smile. Ron, you should eat too. We are classmates in the future, so don't be polite to me. Besides, I can't finish all this by myself. William grabbed a handful and stuffed it into Ron's hand. Although Ron was a little overwhelmed, the temptation of snacks made him accept William's kindness. William, thank you, would you like to try the sandwiches made by my mother? But I don't think you will like it, it's too dry. Ron said as he took out a bulging paper box and opened it, which contained 4 sandwiches. It's okay, I'll give it a try. William took out a piece and took a bite. It's a bit dry, but it tastes good, William said with a smile. Although he said this to take care of Ron's feelings, it tasted good. Ron smiled proudly when he heard William say this. Right, although my mother always forgets that I don't like corned beef, the food she cooks is really delicious. Harry picked up a pie and handed it to Ron. Ron, can you exchange a piece with me? I want to try it too. Of course. Ron agreed happily. Ron was very happy that William and Harry recognized the sandwiches his mother prepared for him. After all, Ron had been wearing his brother's old clothes since he was a child, and now he was carrying an old wand to school. His pets were all unwanted by his brothers, so Ron was a little inferior. Therefore, the recognition of others was very important to him. Not to mention, the people who recognized him were Harry, a celebrity, and William, who was obviously a top student and a wealthy man. The atmosphere between the three of them was very harmonious for a while. Ron introduced these snacks to Harry and William, such as the chocolate frog can only jump once, it is not a real frog. There are also pictures inside, all of which are famous wizards, and he has collected almost 500 of them, the only ones missing are Agrippa and Bartolomeo. William looked at the picture in his hand, which showed a man's face, wearing a pair of half-moon glasses, with a long crooked nose, silver hair and beard. The name under the picture was Albus Dumbledore. William grinned. Dumbledore's appearance was really distinctive. He turned the picture over and looked at the text on the back. Albus Dumbledore, current headmaster of Hogwarts. Recognized as the greatest wizard of our time. Dumbledore's well-known contributions include defeating the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, discovering the 12 uses of dragon blood, and achieving great success in alchemy with his partner Nicholas Flamel. Professor Dumbledore is fond of chamber music and 10-pin bowling. This picture reminded William of his previous life. He remembered that there were cards in the instant noodles at that time, which were the 108 generals in the water margin. He collected them for a while at that time, but he could never collect them all, so he gave up in the end. Now he can collect wizard pictures, which just matches his identity as a collector. After that, William opened a pile of chocolate frogs and collected a lot of pictures from them, including Dumbledore, Morgana, Hengis, Nicholas Flamel, Merlin, etc. Harry and Ron were discussing Beeb's many flavored beans. These strange flavored beans with various flavors were quite popular with the two. Just then, someone knocked on their box door again. The person who came was Neville Longbottom, the future Gryffindor swordmaster, but at this time he was in tears. Excuse me, have you seen my toad? William and the other two looked at each other and shook their heads. He burst into tears immediately. I lost it again. It always wants to run away from me. Don't worry, you will find it eventually. William comforted. Yes, said Neville sadly, well, if you saw, he left. I don't understand why he's in such a hurry. Ron said, if I bought a toad, I'd try to get rid of it as soon as possible. But since I brought Scabbers with me, I have nothing to say. Although William didn't like toads, he could understand Neville's feelings. Scabbers the mouse was still napping on Ron's lap. It must have died a long time ago. It doesn't matter whether it's dead or alive. Ron said in disgust. Yesterday I tried to turn it yellow to make it more interesting, but my spell didn't work. I'll show you how to do it now, pay attention. Ron fumbled in the suitcase for a long time and pulled out a very worn wand. Some parts were peeling off, but one end was still shining with white light. The unicorn hair is about to show. As soon as he raised his wand, the door of the box opened again. Neville appeared at the door again, but this time he was accompanied by a little girl who had changed into new Hogwarts robes. Has anyone seen a toad? Neville lost a toad. The little girl looked arrogant and looked down on everyone. William looked at the little girl. She should be Hermione Granger. She was cute, but her personality was not very good. It seemed that this little girl had to be taught a lesson to make her remember it, William thought. We've already told him that we didn't see it. Ron said this, but the little girl Hermione ignored him and just looked at the wand in his hand. Oh, are you performing magic? Just let us see it. She sat down next to William, while Ron was a little confused. Oh, okay. He cleared his throat. Daisies, sweet cream and sunshine turned the silly fat mouse yellow. He waved his wand, but nothing happened. Scabbers was still gray and sleeping soundly. Are you sure it's a spell? Hermione asked. It doesn't look very good, does it? I have tried a few simple spells at home, just for practice, and they have worked. No one in my family knows magic, so when I received the admission letter, I was very surprised, but also very happy. Because, this is the best magic school I know of. I have memorized all the textbooks, of course, I just hope that this can be used. My name is Hermione Granger. By the way, what are your names? She said in rapid succession. My name is Ron Weasley. Ron muttered. Harry Potter, said Harry. Is that really you? Hermione asked. I know everything about you, of course, I bought a few extra reference books, A History of Modern Magic, The Rise and Fall of the Dark Arts, and Important Magical Events of the 20th Century. Harry looked at William, who nodded. You are indeed mentioned in these books, and there are other books that mention you, such as The Vanishing of the Dark Lord, close double angle bracket. Have you read these books too? Hermione turned to look at William, and couldn't take her eyes off him. This man is so handsome. William smiled slightly. I just happened to read some of them. Hello, I'm William Cavendish. William Cavendish. I seem to have heard this name somewhere before. Hermione frowned. Maybe, there are many people named William, maybe it's just a coincidence. William said lightly. Hearing this, Hermione didn't think about it anymore, nodded and said, maybe, but there are indeed many people named William. By the way, do you know which house you will be sorted into? I have asked around and I hope to be sorted into Gryffindor. Why Gryffindor? William asked casually. Hermione explained, because it is said to be the best. I heard that Dumbledore graduated from there. But I guess Ravenclaw isn't so bad. Anyway, let's go find Neville's toad first. Just a reminder, you better change your clothes quickly, because we are almost there. Then she led Neville to continue looking for toads. William had a good impression of Hermione at this time. She was a kind and warm-hearted person, but a little bit of a know-it-all. No matter which house I'm sorted into, I don't want to be sorted with her. Ron said as he threw his wand into the suitcase. George told me that the spell didn't work. I bet he knew it was a dud. William nodded. It doesn't look like a spell, but your wand also affects your spellcasting. Ollivander said that the wand chooses the wizard, not the wizard chooses the wand. Your wand doesn't quite match you, which may affect your spellcasting in the future. That's how it is. Harry suddenly realized, Ollivander did say that when I bought the wand, and he also measured a lot of data. I tried many wands at that time, and finally chose the current wand. After hearing what William and Harry said, Ron opened his mouth and said in distress, but I don't have money to buy a new wand, and I don't have time to buy one now. The atmosphere was a little silent. This was indeed a problem for Ron. Ron, you should just make do with this wand this semester and buy a new one when the holidays come. If you are short of money, I can provide you with an opportunity to make money. Ron's eyes lit up instantly when he heard that he could make money, but soon dimmed again. After all, in his opinion, William was just a little wizard born in Muggles, how could he have the opportunity to make money in the magic world? However, the temptation of gold galleons still made him ask, what opportunity to make money? William straightened his clothes, sat upright, and then began to say. I forgot to tell you that I am actually a collector. I used to like collecting antiques, but since I came into contact with magic, I have become fond of collecting magic items. Of course, I don't collect all magic items, but some magic items with special meanings. Ron, you grew up among wizards. If you have any magic items that meet the requirements, or if you encounter them in the future, you can trade them with me. I guarantee the price will be fair, and you don't have to worry that I don't have enough galleons to pay. I still have some capital. As he spoke, William took out a handful of gold coins from his pocket, about 20 or so galleons. This is just what I carry with me. Most of my galleons are in the Gringotts vault. Although this is what he said, William does not have a vault in Gringotts. His gold galleons are all in the system space. Of course, Harry can also trade with me, and I guarantee that we will be fair and honest. Ron swallowed his saliva, and his heart was moved. If he could make money, he would no longer have to wear his brother's old robes, hold old wands, and carry unwanted pets. Then he could stand up straight and be a man. Thinking of this, Ron nodded hurriedly. No problem, but I haven't thought of any items that meet your requirements yet. I will definitely find you when I think of them. Don't worry, you can think about it slowly. William nodded and smiled, then looked at Harry. Harry was fine. After all, he also inherited the Potter family's legacy and was not short of money. But facing William, a friend, Harry was quite willing to help. So he nodded and agreed. Okay, that's settled. If you need any help in the future, you can also come to me. We will be classmates in the future, and it is only right for us to help each other. William should win over the Savior team in advance, and there may be unexpected gains in the future. At this time, the door of the box was pushed open again. This time it was neither Neville who was looking for the toad, nor Hermione Granger. 3 boys came in, Draco Malfoy and his 2 followers. Is it true? The whole train was talking about Harry Potter being in this compartment. So, that's you, right? Yes. Harry looked at the 2 boys beside Draco Malfoy, his followers. After all, they looked very distinctive, thick and strong, and particularly ugly. Oh, this is Crabbe, this is Goyle. Draco noticed Harry was looking at them, so he introduced them casually. My name is Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. Ron coughed lightly to avoid laughing out loud. After all, their 2 families didn't get along well. Draco stared at Ron. You think my name is ridiculous, don't you? Don't ask who you are. My father told me that the Weasleys all have red hair, freckles all over their faces, and too many children to support. Draco Malfoy turned and looked at Harry. You'll soon discover that some wizarding families are better than others, Potter. You don't want to make friends with people who are different, do you? I can help you with that. He held out his hand to shake Harry's, but Harry ignored him. I think I can tell who is different. Harry said coldly. Draco Malfoy's pale face flushed slightly. If I were you, Potter, I would be very careful. He said slowly. You should be polite, otherwise you will follow the same path as your parents, who also don't know what is good for them. If you hang out with shady people like the Weasleys or Hagrid, you'll be affected. Draco Malfoy's words instantly made Harry and Ron angry, and they stood up. Even Ron's face was as red as his hair. Can you say that again? Oh, you want to fight, don't you? Facing Ron's anger, Draco Malfoy sneered nonchalantly. Unless you get out of here right now. Harry said this, but he didn't have the courage to show it. After all, Crabbe and Goyle were obviously stronger than him and Ron. But we don't want to leave, do we, boys? We've eaten up all the food, and it seems you still have some. Draco Malfoy said this as Goyle reached out to grab the chocolate frog. At this moment, a hand suddenly grabbed Goyle's wrist, making it difficult for him to move forward. Needless to say, it was William who did it. Originally, he didn't intend to get involved in the dispute between Harry and Malfoy. Wouldn't it be nice to be a spectator? But Malfoy actually planned to snatch William's food, which William couldn't tolerate. William pushed Goyle lightly, and Goyle lost his balance and staggered back several steps, bumping directly into the corridor outside the box, and then stopped. Tisk. I thought you were a rich young master, but I didn't expect you to be a poor. You have no money to buy food and you have to steal from others. How dare you mock others for being poor? William looked at Malfoy with disgust and said sarcastic words. Draco Malfoy's pale face turned red instantly. He just mocked the Weasley family for being poor, and now he was mocked by others for being a poor. How could he bear it? He said angrily. Who are you? How dare you call me Malfoy a poor? Do you know who my father is? How could I be a poor like Weasley? If you are not poor, why did you snatch my snacks? William glanced at him with a teasing tone. Malfoy was speechless, then he looked at Goyle in anger, snorted coldly and turned away. It's not that he didn't want to fight, but from William's push of Goyle just now, it can be seen that William is very strong. If they fight, they may suffer. Seeing Draco Malfoy leave, Crabbe and Goyle hurriedly followed, and the three of them left in a hurry. As soon as Malfoy left, Ron couldn't help laughing. William, you are so awesome. You made Malfoy blush like a monkey's butt. Humph. If that guy hadn't run so fast just now, I would have beaten him so hard that his father wouldn't have recognized him. Ron was bragging when Hermione came again. What happened? Nothing, just getting to know new classmates. Do you need my help? William didn't mention Malfoy. You'd better change into your robes quickly. I just asked the driver at the front of the car and he said we are almost there. Hermione reminded him. William nodded and agreed. Okay, thank you for your reminder, Miss Granger. But I think you should step aside for a while, we need to change clothes. Okay. Hermione turned and left. After Hermione left, William looked at Harry and said, have you ever met that Malfoy before? He seemed to want to make friends with you. Harry nodded and then talked about his encounter with Malfoy in Diagon Alley. I see. What about you, Ron? Do you have a grudge against him? William asked again. Ron shook his head. I don't have a grudge against him, but I have heard about his family. What's going on? Harry asked curiously. Ron said gloomily, they are the first group of people to come back to us after the mysterious man disappeared. They said they were possessed, but my father didn't believe it. He said that Malfoy's father didn't need any excuses and easily turned to the dark forces. Knowing that Malfoy's father was such a person, Harry felt that Malfoy was even more hateful. William looked out the window. It was already dark and the speed of the train seemed to have slowed down. The three of them stopped chatting tacitly and took out black robes from their suitcases to change into. Ron might have been wearing one of his brother's old robes, which was a little shorter, revealing his pair of sneakers underneath. The train will arrive at Hogwarts in 5 minutes. Please leave your luggage on the train and we will take you to school. The voice began to echo in the train. William and Ron looked very nervous, their faces were a little pale. William patted their shoulders and comforted them with a smile. Relax, we are going to school, not to the battlefield. Although Hogwarts will indeed be a battlefield in the future, at least it is not now, they are safe. Ron trembled and said, it's almost like going to the battlefield. I heard from Fred that we have to go through a test before the sorting, and I heard that we have to fight with trolls. Hearing this, Harry instantly became more panicked. Oh no, I don't know any magic, what should I do, what should I do? William saw how nervous they were and suddenly thought it was quite funny, and even wanted to tease them. Fighting a troll. This is different from what I read in the book, it must be a lie. Harry and Ron breathed a sigh of relief, as long as it wasn't a fight with a troll. Then Harry asked curiously, William, what kind of test is that in the book? Is it difficult? Oh, it shouldn't be difficult. The book says that you have to fight a dragon and take its eggs. William made up a story. Dragon. William, you are lying to us, right? Of course. I lied to you, ha ha ha. William laughed and walked out of the box, following the crowd towards the door. After being frightened by William, Harry and Ron were not as nervous as before. They followed William and rushed to the door. Before William could think about it, Professor McGonagall's voice came over. Move forward now, the sorting ceremony is about to begin. Professor McGonagall returned, and the ghosts floated and disappeared through the opposite wall. Now, line up in a single file and follow me. The freshmen lined up and followed Professor McGonagall out of the room, through the entrance hall, and through a double door into the luxurious auditorium. William looked at the Hogwarts auditorium and secretly compared it with the auditorium of his own castle. In the end, he came to a conclusion that each has its own merits. The Hogwarts auditorium is slightly larger, and it is decorated with magical objects, which is indeed very distinctive, but the other things are mediocre. The auditorium of his own castle is slightly smaller, and there are no magical objects decorated, but there were technological creations and many works of art to embellish the auditorium. At this time, students from other grades in the academy were already sitting around 4 long tables. Above the tables, thousands of candles were floating in the air, illuminating the auditorium. The 4 tables were placed with glittering golden plates and high-footed wine glasses. There was another long table on the platform at the top of the auditorium, which was the seat for the teachers. Professor McGonagall brought the first-year students here and asked them to line up facing all the senior students, with the teachers behind them. Then Professor McGonagall said in front of the freshmen. He gently placed a 4-legged stool, and then placed a pointed wizard hat on the stool. The hat was patched, worn, and extremely dirty. William stared at the dirty hat, his eyes revealing a gleam of desire to take it for himself. This is the Sorting Hat. The Sorting Hat has been working in Hogwarts for nearly 1,000 years. If he collected the Sorting Hat, William couldn't imagine what good things the system would reward him with. But William also knew that this was difficult, very difficult. You have to know that the Sorting Hat is not anyone's private property, but the property of Hogwarts. It is responsible for assigning the first-year wizards to colleges. It is basically impossible for anyone to own such a hat. Unless the Sorting Hat itself, that won't work, and Dumbledore won't agree. It's really an unsolvable problem. Does William have to become the headmaster of Hogwarts to own the Sorting Hat for a short time? Thinking of this, William temporarily gave up the idea, it was too far away. At this moment, an ugly song suddenly rang out in the silent hall. You may think I'm not pretty, but don't judge a book by its cover. It turned out that the Sorting Hat was singing. It had a wide crack, like a mouth, and the singing came from that mouth. Come and wear me. Don't be afraid. Don't panic. In my hands, even though I don't have even one hand, you are absolutely safe because I am a magic hat that can think. After the Sorting Hat finished singing, the whole audience applauded. It bowed to the 4 tables one by one, and then stood still. After listening to the Sorting Hat's song, the first-year students finally felt relieved. They were worried about the so-called test before, but they didn't expect that it was just wearing this hat. In fact, it has always been a tradition of Hogwarts to intimidate the new wizards during the sorting ceremony. Even if they are new students from wizard families, their families will not tell them the truth about the sorting ceremony, and may even exaggerate to scare them. How can others hold an umbrella when you are caught in the rain? At this time, Professor McGonagall walked forward a few steps with a roll of parchment in her hand. Whoever's name I call now, put on your hat, sit on the stool, and wait for the sorting. Hannah Abbott. A ruddy-faced little girl with 2 golden braids stumbled out of the queue and put on a hat. Hannah Abbott. The Iron Hat Queen. William couldn't help but think of this name in his mind. It was so famous. The little girl only put on the sorting hat for a moment before the sorting hat shouted. Hufflepuff. The people at the table on the right applauded and cheered Hannah, welcoming her to sit at their table. Susan Burns. Professor McGonagall continued to call. Hufflepuff. The hat shouted quickly. Susan ran over and sat down next to Hannah. Terry Boot. Ravenclaw. This time the second table from the left clapped, and when Terry joined them, several Ravenclaws stood up and shook his hand. Then, one by one, the new students were sorted into 4 colleges. When a new student named Millicent Bulstrode was sorted into Lesterland College, Professor McGonagall called William's name. William Cavendish. William stepped out of the queue, put on the sorting hat, and sat on the stool. He actually had no prejudice against the 4 colleges. It didn't matter which college he went to. After all, in this magical world, strength is the foundation of everything. People with strength can do well no matter where they are. Well, that's an interesting idea. Indeed, strength is the root of everything. You are very smart and see things clearly. A subtle voice sounded in William's ears. It was the muttering of the sorting hat. Huh, you want to take me for yourself. What a bold idea, but you have a good eye. You are pretty good. William's face froze. This sorting hat is really a bit narcissistic. I can see that you are courageous, ambitious, smart, and honest. Which college should you choose? It's really difficult. Oh, and a duke who likes to collect art, antiques, special magical items, magical animals. Ghosts. Beautiful women. Merlin's fattest briefs. What kind of fetish is this? Why do I feel like you're suitable for Azkaban? Well, I'm just curious. Besides, isn't it normal for men to like beautiful women? William argued in his heart. That's true. Well, then you should go to Ravenclaw. There are more beautiful girls there. You are so smart, you are more popular in Ravenclaw. There are so many beauties, so I'll go to Ravenclaw. William was very satisfied. Gryffindor. The Sorting Hat shouted. When William heard the name Gryffindor, his expression froze. Wasn't it Ravenclaw? How did it become Gryffindor? The Sorting Hat said proudly, boy, if you are sorted into Ravenclaw, won't the girls in Ravenclaw suffer? Besides, with your strong curiosity, you are most suitable for Gryffindor. They are a group of restless guys. William curled his lips. Even if you sort me into Gryffindor, can't I pursue the beauties in Ravenclaw? It's a waste of time. After saying that, without waiting for the Sorting Hat to answer, William threw down the hat and walked towards the Gryffindor table. They immediately burst into cheers. William walked over and sat next to Lavender Brown, who was the last freshman sorted into Gryffindor. The surrounding Gryffindor students greeted William one after another, all very enthusiastic. Professor McGonagall continued to call out names. Justin Finch Fletchley. Hufflepuff. After a few more freshmen, Professor McGonagall called Hermione's name. Hermione Granger. Hermione almost ran to the stool and hurriedly put the hat on her head. Gryffindor. As expected, Hermione was sorted into Gryffindor. The little girl was very satisfied with the result. She ran to the Gryffindor table and sat next to William. Miss Granger, it seems that we are destined to be together. We were both sorted into Gryffindor house. William greeted Hermione with a smile. Hermione had a good impression of William. First, William looked very suitable for her, and second, William had read a lot of books like her. So Hermione smiled and responded, you can just call me Hermione. By the way, William, I think you should have reviewed all the first-year courses. William nodded. Of course, and I am more interested in Transfiguration. What a coincidence, I am also very interested in Transfiguration, but there are so many things to learn, I really hope to be more straightforward. Hermione said excitedly. You know, turning one thing into another, of course, should be very difficult. William agreed and said, indeed, but I think you should start with small things, such as turning coins into buttons. I practiced this way before. The two chatted very happily, but all of them were about study. This made the Gryffindor freshmen around them confused. Are you really freshmen? Why do you seem different from us? While William and Hermione were chatting, the sorting ceremony continued, and freshmen were sorted into different colleges one after another. Finally, it was the turn of the freshmen. Harry Potter. As Harry walked forward, there was a sudden buzz of whispers in the restaurant, and the students stretched their necks to look forward, hoping to see Harry's appearance clearly. Such a big commotion directly interrupted William and Hermione's conversation, and their attention was also focused on the Sorting Hat. William, which house do you think Harry Potter will be sorted into? Hermione asked. It should be our Gryffindor house. Harry sat on it for more than 2 minutes before the Sorting Hat called out the final conclusion. Gryffindor. Upon hearing this name, the Gryffindor table suddenly boiled over and the warmest cheers and applause rang out. The prefect Percy stood up and shook hands tightly with Harry. The Weasley twin brothers shouted loudly, "We have Potter! We have Potter!" Looking at their excitement, William couldn't help but smack his lips. Tisk. No wonder Harry has a mysterious self-confidence in the future and dares to rush into anything. With this scene, who wouldn't be confused, let alone Harry who had such an experience since childhood? After all, in the Dursleys' house, Harry lived in the storage room under the stairs, wore his cousin Dudley's old clothes, and their family treated Harry badly. But in the wizarding world, most wizards are very enthusiastic about him, and even feel like fans chasing stars. This kind of huge difference in treatment will change anyone's mentality. After Harry sat down, it was soon Ron's turn. Without any surprise, he was sorted into Gryffindor College. Because all the Weasley family members are from Gryffindor College, he will not be an exception. When the last Blaise Zabini was sorted into Slytherin, Professor McGonagall rolled up the parchment, picked up the sorting hat and left. Albus Dumbledore, who was in the guest of honor seat, stood up, looked at the students with a smile on his face, and stretched out his arms to them. It seemed that nothing made him happier than seeing the students gathered together. Welcome. Welcome to Hogwarts to start a new school year. Before the banquet begins, I want to say a few words. Idiot. Crybaby. Scum. Screw. Thank you, everyone. He sat down again, and everyone applauded and cheered. William sighed that he was a principal who kept his word and said a few words. Unlike the principals of some schools, who said a few simple words and then talked for an hour without stopping, haha. At this time, the originally empty plates were filled with food: roast beef, roast chicken, pork chops, lamb chops, sausages, steaks, boiled potatoes, roast potatoes, fried potato chips, Yorkshire puddings, pea sprouts, carrot juice, gravy, ketchup, and even mint candies. To be honest, the dinner was definitely sumptuous. Although William liked Chinese food, he could accept Western food. William was quite satisfied with the meal. After all, steaks and pork chops could be made delicious even if the chef's cooking skills were average. What's more, the cooking skills of the house elves in Hogwarts were pretty good. After all, it was an ancestral craft. William saw Ron holding a chicken leg in each hand and eating happily, and suddenly felt that he was quite suitable for Hufflepuff College. While Hermione was cutting steak, she continued to discuss study with William. Harry even chatted with the ghost while eating, and it seemed that the conversation was quite good. After everyone had filled their stomachs, the remaining food disappeared from the plate. The plate became clean as new again, and after a while, the pudding came. There were all kinds of ice cream flavors: apple pie, syrup fruit pie, chocolate trifle, fried jam donuts, wine jam pudding, strawberry, jelly, rice pudding. William didn't like desserts very much, so he only took a few strawberries. As the daughter of a dentist, Hermione was naturally very restrained about desserts. The two of them got along surprisingly well. Whether it was study or diet, they had a lot of common topics. Finally, when the pudding disappeared, Professor Dumbledore stood up again, and the hall returned to silence. Now that everyone has had enough to eat and drink, I want to say a few more words to you. At the beginning of the semester, I would like to give you a few points of attention. First-year students, please note that no student is allowed to enter the forest area on the school grounds. Some of our old classmates should also remember this. Dumbledore's shining eyes glanced towards the Weasley brothers. Also, Mr. Filch, the caretaker, has asked me to remind everyone not to perform magic in the corridors during class breaks. The review of Quidditch players will be held in the second week of this semester. Students who are interested in joining the college team should contact Ms. Huo-Chi. Finally, I must tell you that if you do not want to suffer an accident or a painful death, please do not enter the corridor on the right side of the fourth floor. Now, before we go to bed, let's sing the school song together. Dumbledore said loudly, but the smiles of the other teachers seemed to freeze. Dumbledore flicked his wand lightly, and a long golden ribbon flew out of the wand, twisting and winding like a snake high above the dining table, forming lines of words. Everyone chooses a tune they like. Ready, sing. Then all the teachers and students sang loudly, but it sounded scattered and didn't sound like singing at all, but like noise. When everyone finished singing the school song, the Weasley twins continued to sing along with the slow melody of Funeral March. Dumbledore also used his wand to conduct the last few bars for the two of them. When they finished singing, his applause was the loudest. Music, he said, wiping his eyes, is more charming than anything we do here. It's bedtime now, everyone, go back to the dormitory. The first-year students of Gryffindor followed Percy, through the noisy crowd, out of the hall, and up the marble stairs. Along the way, they passed through many corridors, climbed many stairs, and even passed through several secret doors hidden behind sliding baffles and hanging curtains. It can only be said that the roads in Hogwarts Castle are really complicated. They didn't know how long they walked. Everyone yawned, and no one even spoke, because they were really tired and sleepy. Suddenly, Percy in front stopped. In front of them, a bundle of canes was floating in the air. Percy took a step forward, and the canes flew towards him. It's Peeves, a ghost who loves to play pranks. Percy explained to the first-year students. Then he raised his voice and said, Peeves, show yourself. The answer was a loud, shrill, popping sound like a balloon being deflated. Do you want me to go find the Bloody Baron? With a puff, a dwarf suddenly appeared, with a pair of evil black eyes and a big mouth, floating in the air. Holding the bundle of canes tightly in both hands. He. He chuckled, it turns out to be the annoying first-year brat. So funny. As he said that, he suddenly pounced on William and other freshmen. The students were stunned for a moment. William was ready to attack, but Percy yelled, "Go away, Peeves, or I'll tell the bloody Baron that I'm not kidding." Peeves stuck out his tongue and disappeared. Without Peeves' control, the cane in the air fell towards Neville below. William raised his hand and caught the cane steadily, and at this time the cane was only a fist away from Neville's head. "Thank you, William." "Neville, you're welcome." William threw his cane aside. Percy in front led everyone to continue walking, and at the same time reminded, "You should be on your guard against Peeves. The bloody Baron is the only one who can subdue him. He won't even listen to us prefects. We are here." At the end of the corridor hung a portrait of a very plump woman in pink. "Password?" the woman asked. "Dragon Slag." Percy replied. The painting moved forward unsteadily, revealing a circular hole in the wall. They climbed in through the hole, and then they found themselves in the Gryffindor common room. William looked around and found that it was a circular room filled with soft armchairs. Percy guided the girls through a door to their dormitory. Then he led the boys through another door and climbed a spiral staircase. It was obvious that they were in a tower and finally found their dormitory. There were 5 four-poster beds in the dormitory, with crimson velvet curtains hanging. Their boxes had been sent up long ago. William lived in the same dormitory with Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, Neville Longbottom and Seamus Finnegan. Except for William, they all lived in the same dormitory. Everyone was exhausted, so they fell asleep right after changing into pajamas. William had a strong physique and didn't feel tired at all. He found his suitcase and took out an owl, paper and pen from it. Then he sat at the desk and began to write a letter, telling his grandmother Deborah that he had arrived safely at Hogwarts and asked her not to worry. After writing the letter, William first fed the owl Elise something to eat, and then handed the letter to it. Elise was released out of the window by William and disappeared into the misty moonlit night. After seeing Elise off, William also changed into pajamas and went to bed. There was no conversation all night. William woke up at 7 o'clock the next morning, but he didn't get up immediately. Instead, he stayed in bed for another 10 minutes before he lifted the quilt and got out of bed. Then William slapped each of his 4 roommates who were still sleeping, waking them up from their sweet dreams. "Today is the first day of school. We can't be late and leave a bad impression on the teacher." Harry and the other 3 woke up instantly after hearing this. After washing up, they started their journey to find their way. There are a total of 142 staircases in Hogwarts. Some of them are wide and big, some are narrow and small, and shaky. Some lead to different places every Friday, some steps will suddenly disappear halfway up, and you have to remember where to jump over. In addition, there are many doors here. If you ask them to open them impolitely, or poke them in the right place, they will not open the door for you. Some doors are not real doors at all, but just solid walls that look like doors. It is not easy for ordinary people to remember where something is, because everything here seems to be the buildings in the ground seem to be constantly moving. Even the people in the portraits kept visiting each other, and William was sure that the armors could walk. The first time they went out, they almost got lost. Fortunately, they could ask for directions. The resident ghost of Gryffindor Tower, nearly headless Nick, was happy to show them the way. But he didn't like being called almost headless Nick. He liked to be called Nicholas de Mincy, Lord Porpington. It took William and his companions a lot of effort to get to the hall. It was exactly 7:30, and there were not many people in the hall. But William saw Hermione. There was half a bowl of oatmeal in front of her, but her attention was on the parchment in her hand. William walked over and sat next to her, and asked curiously, "Hermione, what are you looking at so intently?" "I'm looking at the schedule," Hermione answered subconsciously. When Harry and the others heard the word schedule, they all looked over. "Hermione, where did you get the timetable? We don't have it. Just when I was having breakfast, my schedule suddenly appeared on the table in front of me. It must have been a kind of magic." Hearing Hermione's explanation, Harry and the others stared at the long table in front of them. Unexpectedly, a piece of parchment suddenly appeared in front of them. William picked up the parchment, on which was written the Gryffindor first-year curriculum. There are a total of 8 courses in the first year: History of Magic, Herbology, Potions, Transfiguration, charms, astronomy, defense against the dark arts, and flying. Among them, astronomy and flying are only one class per week, on Wednesday night, and flying is on Thursday afternoon. Herbology is 3 classes a week, 1 class every day from Monday to Wednesday. The other 5 classes are 2 classes per week, but only potions is 2 classes connected together, on Friday morning. The first class starts at 9 in the morning, and there is a break from noon to 2 in the afternoon. There is usually only 1 class in the afternoon, which ends at 3:30, and there are 2 days off on weekends. William feels that it is still quite relaxed. He should have plenty of time to develop personal hobbies without delaying classes. No wonder so many students go out at night, they are all idle. If they have classes all day, they probably won't have the energy to mess around anymore. The first class of the semester was History of Magic, and the professor was an old ghost. It was said that Professor Binns fell asleep in front of the fireplace in the staff lounge, and forgot to bring his body with him when he went to class the next morning. This shows that Professor Binns was indeed very old when he was alive. During the class, Professor Binns kept talking in a monotonous voice, and the students below scribbled down names and dates, confusing the evil man Murik with the weird man Ulrich. Some students even fell asleep directly, but Professor Binns still didn't care, and talked on his own, regardless of whether the students listened or not. This reminded William of some university professors in his previous life, especially the professor who taught elective courses, who was exactly the same as Professor Binns. Fortunately, William was well prepared. After getting the class schedule, William found that the first class was History of Magic, and he remembered Professor Binns's name. So when he went back to the dormitory to get the textbooks, he not only brought History of Magic, but also Ancient Magic Rune Simple Introduction, and began to learn ancient magic runes by himself. As for the History of Magic, Professor Binns only taught about things from the book. William had already read the entire history of magic and memorized it. So it made no difference whether he listened or not. Hermione, who was beside William, listened carefully even though she had memorized the entire book. But when she found that William had been reading with his head down, she couldn't help but look over. But when she saw the words in the book clearly, she realized that she didn't recognize them at all. So she asked curiously, "William, what book are you reading? Why isn't it History of Magic? Close double angle bracket. Open double angle bracket Ancient Magical Runes close double angle bracket. Ancient Runes. But we're in a History of Magic class, don't you have to listen? It's okay. I just listened to what Professor Binns said. They are all things from the textbook. I have already memorized everything in the textbook, so it doesn't matter whether you listen or not." After hearing William's explanation, Hermione frowned slightly. This was a strong opponent. There was actually someone who memorized the entire textbook like her. Although she felt that William was a little disrespectful to the professor, Hermione also felt that William's behavior could be used as a reference. But it won't work in this class because she didn't bring other books. But in the next History of Magic class, if the situation is still the same, she will have to follow suit. Seeing Hermione's thoughtful look, William encouraged in a low voice, "Hermione, I remember you said you have memorized all the textbooks, so you can also read other books." Hermione hesitated for a moment, but finally said, "But I didn't bring other books." William smiled and said, "It doesn't matter, I brought them, we can read them together, but I don't know if you are interested in ancient magic runes. I have never come across ancient magic, but it is not impossible. Anyway, I have nothing to do now." Hermione pursed her lips and answered. "That's good," William said as he moved the book towards Hermione. Hermione also subconsciously moved closer to William, and the distance between the two of them became closer and closer, and finally they were even close to each other. Harry and Ron, who were sitting behind the two of them, looked at each other in bewilderment. What were the two guys doing in front of them? Were they dating? William didn't know what they were thinking, otherwise he would have praised them for their good eyesight. Although Hermione was very talented in learning, it was still very stressful for her to learn ancient magic runes for the first time. William would explain it to her from time to time. Although he was also a beginner, his memory and comprehension were far beyond ordinary people, and his learning ability was much higher than Hermione's. The relationship between the two became closer as they communicated and learned. The class ended unknowingly, and Professor Binns left an 8-inch paper to explain the English magic runes. The early origins of the Land Wizards. The next class is the Herbology class, and the teacher is Professor Sprout, the head of Hufflepuff House. She is a short and fat witch with flowing gray hair and a thick hat full of patches. During the Herbology class, she will take William and others to the greenhouse behind the castle, where they will learn how to cultivate exotic plants and fungi and understand their uses. Because it was the first time for William and others to take the Herbology class, Professor Sprout did not arrange for them to actually practice. In the first Herbology class, Professor Sprout mainly gave a brief introduction to the magical plants in the greenhouse, including their names, living habits and so on. At noon, in the Hogwarts Great Hall, William and Hermione sat together for lunch. As for his roommates, who were they? The two chatted while eating, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. Hermione, do you know who is our charms teacher? William asked mysteriously. Of course I know, it's Professor Freeze, he is the head of Ravenclaw House. Hermione said proudly. Then do you know Professor Freeve's other identity? Other identities? What other identities does Professor Freeway have? It's not mentioned in the book. Are you lying to me? Hermione was a little confused and looked at William in disbelief. Hermione, you have to know that there are always things in the world that are not recorded in books, or recorded in books but you haven't seen them. William acted like a philosopher, talking about the great principles he had realized. Hermione nodded helplessly and said, okay, then what other identity do you think Professor Freebie has? Professor Freeway was a wizard duel champion when he was young, and he was very powerful. William leaned close to Hermione's ear and whispered. His breath when he spoke made Hermione's ears itchy, but Hermione was already attracted by what William said. Wizard duel champion. Really? Hermione couldn't believe it. After all, Professor Freeway didn't look like a duel champion at all. Professor Freeway was surprisingly small, only about 1 meter tall. He didn't look like a duel champion. Of course it's true. It's really unbelievable, but now I'm more looking forward to the afternoon spells class. I wonder what spells Professor Freeway will teach us. Hermione said excitedly. The two chatted casually, and soon they finished lunch, and then went back to the Gryffindor common room together. Seeing William's familiarity, Hermione admired him a little. After all, they just came to Hogwarts last night, and they didn't walk through it 3 times in total, but William could find the right way very skillfully, which was hard not to admire. In the afternoon spells class, Professor Freeway's performance made Hermione very suspicious that William was lying to him. Because Professor Freeway was too short, he had to stand on a pile of books during class to reach the desk. As a result, when he took out the roster to call the roll and read Harry's name, he screamed excitedly, and then fell to the ground and disappeared. This funny performance made Hermione look at William with suspicion in her eyes. William could even read the meaning of her eyes. That's it. Duel champion. Are you kidding me? Or have you also been fooled? Although there were some twists and turns in the first spell class, they were not serious. Professor Flitwick's teaching ability is still very strong. He explained the pronunciation of a spell and the gestures of waving the wand in great detail. What we learned today is the Illumination Charm, also known as the Luminescent Charm, which is a very basic spell and a very commonly used spell. Even though it is the most basic spell, everyone is very interested and looks eager to try. This is because the 2 classes in the morning, History of Magic and Herbology, are not magical at all in the eyes of most students. Their ideal magic should be colorful, not boring, and not gardening. So when Professor Flitwick explained the pronunciation and gestures of spells, all the students listened carefully. Professor Flitwick stood on a pile of books and said in a sharp voice, "Everyone remember this action, shake your wrist slightly, and swing the wand upward about 6 inches. Then everyone follow me and practice, shake it slightly. Remember, shake it slightly, don't make it too big." Although William has mastered the spell, he still practices with Professor Flitwick. The action is very simple, and the students mastered it in a few tries. Then Professor Flitwick began to explain the pronunciation of the spell, Lumos, Lumos, in one go. Lumos. Everyone followed suit. Okay, let's combine the spell with the wand, Lumos. Professor Flitwick flicked his wrist slightly and waved his wand upwards slightly. The next moment, a beam of light shone from the tip of his wand, like a flashlight. "See, that's it, now you can practice freely." Then Professor Flitwick chanted another spell, extinguished the light on his wand, and began to observe the students practice. Even for very basic spells, most students failed the first time they cast them. However, the tips of their wands still had some reaction, not to the point of no movement. Of course, there were a few successful students, and among them, William performed the best, with a stable and soft light. The second was Hermione, who also performed well, but not as stable as William. Very well done, everyone can see that Mr. Cavendish's performance is very good and very standard. Professor Freeway clapped his hands and praised. Gryffindor will get 2 extra points for Mr. Cavendish's outstanding performance. Everyone keep practicing, pay attention to the hand gestures. Although Hermione knew that William had taught himself all the courses, she was a little overwhelmed when he really showed his excellence. They both came from Muggle families and had prepared for all the courses before school started, but William's performance was better than hers. How could she accept this? So Hermione practiced more attentively. But in fact, Hermione's idea was a little biased. She memorized all the textbooks, but there were still things she didn't understand. William was different. He not only memorized the contents of all the textbooks, but also understood and mastered them. This is the difference between the two people's preparation. Lumos. Hermione's performance this time has obviously improved. In fact, magic in this world is very idealistic. A person's emotional power, or spiritual power, is a very important factor affecting magic. Of course, talent is still the most important factor, but Hermione's talent is not low, otherwise she would not be able to become the Minister of Magic in the future. So with the blessing of emotional power, Hermione seems to have made obvious progress. Until the end of class, Hermione has been practicing hard and ignored William. After a class of practice, most people have basically mastered this spell, but the proficiency and stability are different. After class, Hermione returned to normal and even invited William to go to the library to do homework together. William had no objection. On the way to the library, Hermione asked curiously, "William, do you have any tricks? Why do I feel that you cast spells very smoothly and skillfully in class, as if you have practiced many times?" Hermione has always been serious about learning, even a little anxious, and always wants to enrich herself. At the same time, she is not stingy in sharing her knowledge and experience. Although others think she is showing off, of course this possibility is not ruled out. So William can understand Hermione's question. Although he has not practiced many times, the skills rewarded by the system are similar to the skills that ordinary wizards master through a lot of practice. So William explained, "Hermione, no matter what kind of magic, you have to wave the wand, so making your wand as easy to use as your arm is a shortcut to learning magic. Maybe it's because I have a foundation in fighting and shooting, so I have better control over my arms, so I can wave the wand more smoothly. And before school started, I did a lot of training to make myself more proficient in controlling the wand." After listening to William's explanation, Hermione's eyes lit up. "William, can you teach me how to train?" "Of course, but we have to wait until the weekend. We have classes every day these days and homework to do, so I'm afraid we won't have time to train." Although she was a little impatient, William's words still made sense, so Hermione nodded and said, "Okay, then it's the weekend, it's a deal." Soon, the two came to the library and stopped chatting consciously. The librarian, Madame Pants, was a thin and old woman who looked like a malnourished vulture. She was also a witch with a bad temper, especially when she found someone trying to destroy her cherished books. She almost always stayed in the library, guarding her cherished books and monitoring the students who used the books. Under her management, the library of Hogwarts was not like a place for learning, but more like a totalitarian country. Once someone violated the school rules, Madame Pants would kick him out of the library with a feather duster. This is why everyone will consciously abide by the rules as soon as they enter the library. Madame Pants is really too strict. William and Hermione found a secluded corner and started doing their homework, and they would whisper to each other from time to time. In fact, the homework assigned by the professor will basically be collected and checked next week, but William still likes to finish it early and do other things. Besides, there is Hermione to accompany her. It is more efficient for two people to do homework together, and they can also cultivate feelings, right? There is no reason not to do this kind of thing that kills two birds with one stone. In the evening, when William returned to the dormitory, Harry and the others had already returned and were sitting around chatting. When he saw William coming in, Harry smiled and asked, "William, tell me where you and Hermione went on a date. I haven't seen you two the whole afternoon." The other three also looked over with gossip on their faces. William closed the dormitory door and said casually, "Hermione and I were doing homework in the library. Do you think this is a date? Why not? You've been together the whole afternoon, it's almost like a date," Ron said with a smile. However, Seamus was concerned about a different issue. Isn't the homework due next week? Is it necessary to do it now? It doesn't matter. Homework has to be done anyway. It doesn't matter if it's early or late. The sooner you finish, the more you can rest assured. William put his school bag beside the bed and joined them. "Let's not talk about me." "What are you talking about?" "We just talked about our respective family situations, so I'll go first," said Seamus. "My family is half and half. My father is a muggle. My mother didn't tell my father that she was a wizard until she got married. It scared him a lot." Everyone laughed. "What about you, Neville?" Ron asked. "Oh, I was raised by my grandmother, she is a wizard," Neville said, "but for so many years, my family has always treated me as a muggle. My uncle Algy always tried to take advantage of me and force me to show my magic." "How did he force you?" William and the others asked curiously. "I remember one time, he pushed me off the Black Lake Pier and nearly drowned me, but nothing happened." William couldn't help but smack his lips after listening to Neville's description. My goodness, this could be directly counted as murder. Harry was also stunned. Although he was not welcome in the Dursley family and was often beaten by his cousin Dudley, it was not to such an outrageous extent. Neville went on, "Until I was 8 years old, one day my uncle Algy came over for tea. He hung me upside down from the upstairs window with my ankles facing up, and my Aunt Annie happened to hand him a piece of meringue, and he lost his grip and didn't hold me firmly." "Did you fall?" Seamus asked hastily. "I bounced up by myself, flew across the garden and fell on the road." They were all very happy, and Auntie Annie even cried with joy. William couldn't help but sigh that it was not easy for Neville to grow up alive. Neville didn't seem to care at all, and continued to tell the story with great interest. "If only you had seen the looks on their faces when I received the letter of acceptance to Hogwarts. They had thought that I wasn't magically competent enough to attend the school. Uncle Algy was so happy that he bought me a toad." After Neville finished speaking, everyone looked at William beside him. William smiled and said, "I was also raised by my grandmother, but she was not a wizard. My parents died when I was 4 years old. If I hadn't received the notice from Hogwarts, I would never have thought that there were wizards in this world." Hearing that William's parents had passed away, they all comforted William. Harry even said, "William, although both your parents are dead, at least you still have your grandmother. Unlike me, you can only live with my aunt, and that family is terrible." Well, is this a competition of misery? Finally, it was Ron's turn. He didn't feel miserable at this time. After all, his parents were still alive, and he had many brothers and sisters at home. They were just a little poor. "My whole family is wizards. My father works in the Ministry of Magic and my mother stays at home to take care of the 7 of us. I am the 6th child in our family." "You have so many children in your family," Seamus exclaimed. William and Harry knew about Ron's situation, and Neville should have heard about the Weasley family, so the 3 of them were not surprised. Ron nodded. "It's indeed a lot. I have 5 brothers and a sister, but if you have 5 brothers, you will never use new things. Bill and Charlie have graduated. Bill is the head boy and Charlie is the captain of the Quidditch team. Percy is now the prefect. Although Fred and George are naughty, their grades are excellent. Everyone thinks they are interesting and hopes that I can be like them, but then again, if I can do it, it won't be a big deal because they have done it before me." Seeing that Ron was a little negative, William encouraged him with a smile. "In that case, you can do something that they haven't done. For example, he became a prefect, the president of the boys' union, and the captain of the Quidditch team, while also achieving straight A grades. I believe that by then, they will definitely be proud of you." Listening to William's description, Ron and the other three couldn't close their mouths anymore. Is this something that a human can do? Has anyone done it in the history of Hogwarts? Maybe, but they just don't know it. Ron smacked his lips and muttered, "Forget it, I'd rather be an ordinary 6th grader." After ending this topic, everyone lost interest in chatting. In addition, there was Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration class tomorrow morning, so they all started to wash up, put on pajamas and went to bed. William lay in bed and began to think about what Hogwarts had that was worth collecting, easy to get, and would not attract other people's attention. The Philosopher's Stone. Definitely not. Not to mention that William didn't know where it was now. Even if he knew, he couldn't do it easily. After all, Dumbledore was going to use it to fish. The Mirror of Arised. The Sorting Hat. The Sword of Gryffindor. The Pensieve. The Time Converter. None of these would work. After thinking about it, William finally thought of two things that he would most likely be able to get. One was the Marauder's Map, which was in the hands of the Weasley twins. Another one is the Ravenclaw diadem, which is also a Horcrux of Voldemort. It was thrown into the Room of Requirement. Although it is in the Room of Requirement, it is full of things and it takes a lot of time to find it. But the advantage is that it will basically not alarm anyone. After all, the Room of Requirement is very hidden and only a few people know about it. And no one knows that the Ravenclaw diadem is in it, not even Ravenclaw's daughter, the Ghost Lady Helena. William thought about it carefully for a long time, and finally decided that it was the Ravenclaw diadem. I hope it won't be too difficult to find by then. Thinking of this, William gradually fell asleep. The next day, the first class in the morning was Transfiguration. When William and his friends just sat down to attend the class, Professor McGonagall gave them a warning. Transfiguration is the most complex and dangerous magic you will learn in Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall said seriously, "If anyone makes mischief in my class, I will ask him to leave and never let him come in again. I have already warned you." Professor McGonagall, as the deputy headmaster of Hogwarts and the head of Gryffindor, had a strong aura that frightened the first-year students into silence. Then, she waved her wand and turned her desk into a pig, and then back again. The students below were all attracted and couldn't wait to start learning. Seeing that the students' interest had been aroused, Professor McGonagall nodded with satisfaction. This trick has been tried and tested by her many times and has become her standard procedure for teaching freshmen. If you want to learn Transfiguration, you must first understand GAMP's basic laws of Transfiguration. Professor McGonagall waved her wand, and densely packed words appeared on the blackboard. GAMP's basic law of transformation, which is the basis of all transformations, even an iron law. Before anyone learns Transfiguration, they must remember this knowledge to avoid irreversible consequences. The young wizards took notes quickly while listening to the lecture, and even William was no exception this time. Although he has an excellent memory, it is better not to be too jumpy when facing Professor McGonagall. After William and the others wrote down a lot of complicated and difficult notes, Professor McGonagall began to let them practice. She gave each of them a match and asked them to try to turn the match into a needle. Just now, they saw Professor McGonagall easily turn the desk into a pig, but when it was their turn, they realized how difficult it was. No matter how they waved their wands and chanted spells, the matches in front of them showed no sign of turning into needles. Even Seamus's match burned directly, and Professor McGonagall frowned and gave him another match. "Mr. Finnegan, I hope there won't be a next time. This is a transfiguration spell, not a fire spell." "Okay, Professor McGonagall," Seamus answered awkwardly. Ron waved his wand vigorously, but the match in front of him did not change at all. He said a little discouraged, "Transfiguration is so difficult. Most students have this feeling. Compared with the Lumos charm they learned yesterday, the difficulty of Transfiguration has increased dramatically. Even Hermione, a top student, feels that Transfiguration is very difficult. Although her matches have changed a little, they are still far from turning into needles." Professor McGonagall did not say anything about their performance. After all, after teaching for so many years, there are only a handful of students who can turn matches into needles in the first class. Harry and the others are performing very normally now. However, when Professor McGonagall passed by William's desk, William waved his wand lightly, and the match on the desk turned into a shiny silver needle, with a sharp end and a threading hole on the other end. Professor McGonagall showed a rare smile and said happily, "Excellent transfiguration, Mr. Cavendish." Professor McGonagall was very impressed with William. After all, he lived in a castle half the size of Hogwarts. What impressed her even more was that when William bought a wand, he turned an empty box into a white dove. Coupled with this incident, Professor McGonagall felt that William was very talented in transfiguration. And William, a talented student, was from Gryffindor, so Professor McGonagall was even happier. 5 points to Gryffindor for Mr. Cavendish's brilliant transfiguration. Thank you, Professor. William thanked him obediently. Harry looked at William with admiration. They both lived in the Muggle world and had never been exposed to magic before, but William performed better than the children of wizard families, which made Harry admire him very much. "William, how did you do it?" Harry turned around and asked humbly. William sat in a row behind Harry, next to Hermione, and Harry and Ron sat together. Hearing Harry's question, Ron and Hermione also pricked up their ears. They also wanted to hear William's experience. William did not hide anything and began to tell his own experience. First of all, you need to have a clear concept or impression of the needle. Then, you must have enough faith when casting the spell. That is, you must be confident and believe that you can turn the match into a needle. Finally, you must be calm and not be too impatient. So, I'll give it a try. Harry nodded thoughtfully. Ron and Hermione were also thinking in their hearts, trying to adjust their spells. But there was one thing William didn't mention, and that was the most important point: talent. Talented people learn faster and more deeply than ordinary people. William suspected that his talent in transfiguration was originally strong, and with the system's reward, his current talent was not at the same level as Harry and the others. William opened the system and looked at his attribute panel. Host: William Cavendish. Physical fitness: 60. Strength: 72. Agility: 61. Spirit: 85. Magic power: 30. Note: magic power is a quantitative value of the wizard's magic power. The average magic power of an ordinary adult wizard is 10. Skills: Art Appreciation Advanced, Horsemanship Master, Fighting Master, Shooting Advanced, Spellcasting Skills Advanced. Note: skill levels are divided into elementary, intermediate, advanced, master, grandmaster, and legendary levels. Spells: Illumination, Descaling, Unlocking, Unlocking, Magnification, Copying, Resuscitation, Repairing, Water, Transfiguration, Full Body Binding, Explosion, Freezing, Bat Spirit, Stunning, Disarming, Talents. Night Vision Owl, Flexible Tongue, Puffy, Transfiguration, Transfiguring Rabbit, Onomatopoeia, Raven. Note: the above talents are rewards given by the system for William's collection of magical animals. Items: Basic spells, Traceless Stretch Suitcase. William previously collected a pet shapeshifting rabbit, and the system rewarded him with the talent for shapeshifting, which made his talent in shapeshifting more prominent. Not only that, William's magic value is much higher than theirs, so the gap in casting shapeshifting is even greater. Speaking of magic value, William's initial magic value is 15 points, which has exceeded the average value of ordinary adult wizards. Maybe this is a gifted talent. Of course, it may also be caused by physical fitness or strong mental strength. Anyway, his initial magic power is relatively high. In addition to the system's rewards, his current magic value has reached 30 points, which is more than twice that of ordinary wizards. But William still feels that it is not enough, or even far from enough. Not to mention Dumbledore, the highest combat power, just say the 4 deans of Hogwarts, which one is not super powerful, many times more than ordinary wizards. William estimates that their magic values are all above 90, or even higher. By the end of the class, besides William, only Hermione, Harry and Ron managed to change the matches, but they also failed. Even so, Professor McGonagall smiled with satisfaction. The next step was the defense against the dark arts, which everyone was looking forward to the most. However, William thought they would be greatly disappointed. As expected, Professor Quirrell's defense against the dark arts class almost became a joke. As soon as they entered the classroom, William and the others smelled a pungent smell of garlic. It is said that this was to drive away a vampire he met in Romania, because Professor Quirrell was afraid that the vampire would come back to catch him. What a bizarre and idiotic rumor. Not to mention whether the vampire would come to catch him, even if he did, would the other professors at Hogwarts just sit back and watch? Not to mention that Dumbledore is here, which vampire dares to come to Hogwarts to make trouble? As for the big scarf on his head, Professor Quirrell said that it was a gift from an African prince. As for why he gave the gift, Professor Quirrell's explanation was that he helped the prince get rid of the entanglement of the resurrected zombies. As for whether everyone really believed what he said, no one knew. Anyway, William didn't believe it, because he had a script, didn't he? Perhaps Seamus didn't believe it either, because he raised his hand and asked, Professor Quirrell, how did you defeat the resurrected zombies? Tell us about it. Professor Quirrell's face turned red when he heard this, and he said vaguely. The resurrected zombie. Well, the weather is really nice today, with a clear sky and crisp autumn air, that's it. William looked out the window. The sky was gloomy without a trace of sunshine. Was it a clear sky? Or was it a crisp autumn air? At this moment, William felt a little sorry for Quirrell. He was bewitched by Voldemort and became his temporary parasitic body. He didn't even think about how this would end well. But it might also be that he was frightened by Voldemort. After all, Voldemort's reputation was quite intimidating. After a defense against the dark arts class, everyone had a bad impression of Professor Quirrell. Because he didn't teach them any knowledge at all. Like Professor Binns, who taught the history of magic, he only knew how to read textbooks. After class, everyone walked towards the auditorium while complaining about Quirrell's weirdness, without any respect for the professor. Ron said with a smile, "Did you notice that Quirrell's big scarf also exudes a strange smell?" "Yes, Ron, did you notice it too? I was close to the podium, and I also smelled a strange smell." Dean Thomas also said. After these words were heard by the Weasley twins who happened to be passing by, they came over. Fred pretended to be mysterious and said, "Then do you know what's in Quirrell's big scarf?" Ron and others shook their heads, indicating that they didn't know. George smiled and said, "Let me tell you, his big scarf must be stuffed with garlic, so that no matter where he goes, he will be protected." Although the Weasley twins have big imaginations, the things in Quirrell's scarf are not something that can be figured out just by having big imaginations. After all, who would have thought that Voldemort was wrapped in Quirrell's scarf? After lunch, William and his friends left the castle and went to the greenhouse behind the castle without taking a break. This class was an herbal class. This time it was no longer a theoretical class, they were going to start practicing. Today they were going to transplant Dictamnus, a plant with healing and repairing magical properties. Eating it raw can heal shallow wounds, and extracting it into an essence has even better efficacy. Chopped Dictamnus is the material for making a stimulating potion. Everyone, please note that when transplanting white radish, the depth of the pit should be determined according to the root size of the transplanted seedling. Professor Sprout held a white radish seedling in his left hand and gestured with his right hand. Have you seen this terminal bud? When transplanting, the terminal bud must be placed straight up, 1 to 2 centimeters below the soil surface, and the root system must be stretched out. After the plants are arranged, they can be covered with soil. The thickness of the soil should cover the top buds by 3 to 5 centimeters. After covering the soil surface should be leveled and slightly vibrated. Professor Sprout explained while actually operating the soil. Remember all of this. Now you can start transplanting. This herbal class is divided into 2 groups, William and Hermione. William is responsible for digging and filling the soil, and Hermione is responsible for straightening the seedlings. The two chatted while working. "William, have you ever grown flowers before? You look so skilled at it," Hermione asked curiously. Upon hearing this, William smiled and explained, "I haven't grown flowers before, but I have grown vegetables. I have grown a lot of peppers, tomatoes and other vegetables at home." "You've grown vegetables? That's incredible." Hermione was a little surprised. Of course, when planting peppers and tomatoes, you also need to raise seedlings first, wait for the seeds to germinate, and then transplant them into the ground after the seedlings grow out, which is not much different from transplanting white fresh radish. William said as a matter of course. William was a real Chinese in his previous life, and farming was a talent engraved in his soul. Therefore, William and his companions transplanted white fresh radish the fastest and with the highest degree of completion. Professor Sprout also added 2 points to Gryffindor for this. Hermione was very happy about this because it was the first time she scored for Gryffindor, although it was with William, but she finally scored. You know, today this time, it was the third time William added points for Gryffindor. And Hermione hadn't even once before. How could the arrogant Hermione bear it? After class, when William walked out of the greenhouse, he suddenly thought of something. Since magical animals can be collected, what about magical plants? At this moment, Hermione invited William and said, "William, I'm going to the library to study. Do you want to go with me?" William smiled apologetically when he heard this. "I'm sorry, Hermione, I have something to do in the afternoon, so I may not be able to go to the library to study with you." His current idea is to verify whether the magical plants can be collected. It is not important to accompany Hermione to the library. Hearing this, Hermione frowned slightly and said, "What a pity, then I will go to the library to study by myself. William, I will definitely work hard to surpass you." After saying this, Hermione walked forward quickly. Seeing this, Harry and Ron came to William, and Harry asked curiously, "Why did Hermione leave? Did you have a fight?" "I told you that no one could stand her temper," Ron muttered. William was a little puzzled. How could they tell that he and Hermione had quarreled? "We didn't quarrel. Hermione was going to the library and I had something to do in the afternoon, so we separated." "William, what's the matter with you? Do you need my help?" Harry asked enthusiastically when he heard William say that he had something to do. Ron also nodded. "Yes, do you need our help?" "No, it's just a small matter, I can handle it myself." William declined. "Okay, we'll go first." Seeing that William didn't need help, Harry and Ron turned around and left without asking any more questions. William turned around and went back to the greenhouse to find Professor Sprout. Professor Sprout was a little surprised, but still asked gently, "Mr. Cavendish, why haven't you left yet? Do you have something to talk to me about?" William smiled shyly. "Professor, can I buy a dictamne from you? I want to observe and study it." "Of course, but you don't have to buy it, I can give you one." Professor Sprout agreed very straightforwardly. After all, dictamne is not a precious herb, nor is it dangerous. It is even a wound medicine. So she agreed to William's request very straightforwardly, and quickly took a dictamne to William. "Thank you, Professor." William took the white mulberry. "You are welcome. Professor, you are busy, I will take my leave now." William took the white fresh and left the greenhouse. As soon as he left the greenhouse, William said to the system in his heart, "System, collect the white fresh in my hand." Ding! Collect the extraordinary 2-star plant Dianthus, and reward the host with magic power +2, money +200 galleons, and a bottle of stimulating potion. Yes, it works. William was a little excited, but this was also within his expectations. It doesn't make sense that magical animals can be collected, but magical plants can't. The fact is just as he expected, and his collection goals have greatly increased in the future. Dragon scum. William said the password to the fat lady. Then a round hole appeared in the wall, and William went in. As soon as he entered the common room, William saw Harry and the others gathered together, chatting animatedly. Harry also saw William, and he asked with a smile, "William, you are back so soon, have you finished your work?" William shook his head. "No, I just went back to the dormitory to get some things, you guys chat, I'll leave first." "Oh, then go ahead and get busy." Harry nodded nonchalantly and continued chatting with Ron and the others. William returned to the dormitory and pulled out his suitcase from under the bed. He opened the suitcase, revealing the space inside. William went in with the white fresh water and closed the suitcase. William put the white fresh water in the alchemy room and went to the collection room. At this time, there were only a few empty shelves and a trash can in the collection room. However, there were several cages on the ground, which contained the magical animals collected by William. Puffy catkins, shape-shifting rabbits, ravens, mice, etc. In fact, they are just a few small pets. William prepared food and water for them for several days, so he didn't worry about them starving to death. It's just that they have been locked in cages for the past 2 days, and they look a little depressed. William opened the cages one by one and let them out to move around. Horcrux looks like a round ball of fur, and has a very gentle personality. It is easy to take care of it, and it will hum a low melody when it is proud. From time to time, a very thin and long pink tongue will emerge from the middle of its body, stretching and spitting in the room like a snake, looking for food. Horcrux is a scavenger, eating everything from leftovers to spiders, so it is very easy to feed. The shape-shifting rabbit is a chubby white rabbit. It likes to change from one thing to another. Sometimes it becomes a satin top hat, and sometimes it turns back into a rabbit. It never gets tired of playing. The raven is a black bird that likes to imitate the sounds around it, chirping non-stop, and it even imitates William's speech. The mouse is not special, just sleek and shiny, and likes to use its long bare tail to support itself and play a jumping game. William played with them for a while, put them back in the cage, prepared food and water for them, and then left. William felt that his box was a little small at this time. The collection room inside was okay for storing some magic items, but it was not enough for magical creatures. He had to think of a way. This system didn't know how to help. It was really annoying. After leaving the box, there was still no one in the dormitory. William looked at the time. It was already past 5 o'clock. They probably went to have dinner. William didn't think about it anymore. Eating was more important. He pushed the suitcase under the bed and got up to go to the hall. When William arrived at the hall, many people were already having dinner. He glanced around the Gryffindor table and didn't see Hermione, so he walked over to sit next to Harry and Ron. Harry looked a lot more relaxed now, not as nervous and restrained as when he first arrived at Hogwarts. "Harry, you seem to have changed a lot, not as reserved as you were the past 2 days." After hearing William's words, Harry smiled and said, "Maybe it's because I'm familiar with it. Besides, I was a little worried about my studies before. After all, I have never been exposed to magic. So why are you not worried now? Because I found that except for you, William, and Hermione, the other students' levels are about the same. No matter if they are from a Muggle family or a wizard family, everyone needs to learn a lot, and I am not the worst one." "I see." William understood. Ron, who was on the other side of Harry, heard this and explained, "Harry, in fact, in wizard families, parents rarely teach their children magic before they go to school. Students from wizarding families, at most, know more about the wizarding world than students from Muggle families. It seems to be true. I don't know what the parents of wizarding families think. Maybe they are afraid that their teaching level is not good enough and they will teach their children bad things." William didn't see Hermione until he finished dinner. He guessed that Hermione might have finished eating before him and went back to the library to study. "I'm going to the library to read. Harry, Ron, do you want to go?" William looked at Harry and the others and asked. Harry and Ron looked at each other and both refused. "No, let's go back to the dormitory." "Well, I'll go to the library first." William stood up and walked towards the library. Harry and the others looked at William's back and couldn't help but sigh. No wonder William is so good, he is so hardworking. "Do you think we are too lax?" Although they said so, the pace of the two returning to the dormitory did not slow down at all. William came to the second floor of the castle, where the library was. It was now 6:10 in the evening. The library closed at 8 p.m., and he could still read for nearly 2 hours. As soon as he entered the library, Madame Pance's sharp eyes swept over, which made people feel very stressed. The whole library was quiet. William took a copy of As Long as There Is a Wand, There Is a Way, from the bookshelf, and then went to the place where he sat yesterday. Then he saw Hermione sitting there, reading seriously, and whether she would take notes. William's mouth corners rose slightly, and he walked over to Hermione and sat down. Hermione, who was immersed in the ocean of knowledge, suddenly felt someone sitting next to her, and frowned immediately. "Sorry, there's someone here." "Hey, William, why is it you?" But when Hermione saw that it was William, her brows relaxed instantly and a bright smile appeared on her face. "I came to the library after finishing my work, but you said there were people here, so I'd better find another seat." William sighed deliberately. Hermione immediately explained, "William, you misunderstood. There is no one here. I just didn't want others to sit here, so I said that on purpose." "Oh, so that's how it is. Can I sit here?" William asked with a smile. Of course, the seat was originally reserved for you. Hermione nodded. William teased Hermione and was in a good mood. Hermione was also in a good mood when she saw William coming to find her. However, thinking that he didn't see Hermione in the hall, William asked her with concern, "Hermione, have you had dinner? Have you eaten yet, William? If you haven't eaten yet, let's go. I'll accompany you to the auditorium to eat something." "No, I've already eaten. I just didn't see you in the hall before, and I was worried that you were too engrossed in studying and forgot to eat dinner, so I asked you." Hermione was a little happy after hearing William's words. This feeling of being cared for was really good and warm. "Don't worry, I won't be stupid enough to forget to eat. Although studying is important, eating is also important. I thought you would study so hard to surpass me," William teased. Upon hearing this, Hermione snorted proudly, "Don't disturb me while I'm studying, I will definitely surpass you." Then Hermione began to read her notes seriously again. William smiled awkwardly and opened the book in his hand. Open double angle bracket. As long as there is a magic wand, there is a way. This is a book that introduces common methods of using magic to solve problems. This book is a typical wizard's thinking. Any problem is tried to be solved with magic. Although it is a bit extreme, it is just what William needs. Whether William is in this life or the previous life, he has never been exposed to magic before, which makes his thinking like that of an ordinary person. When encountering problems, he may not think of using magic to solve them. But since he has learned magic, how can he not use it? Therefore, this book is very practical for him and can teach him a lot of things and ideas. In this way, William and Hermione did not interfere with each other. They each looked at their own books and thought about their own problems. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and support our channel.